You're speaking in generalities of Biden's cognitive decline, and what Nina presented to you, which is relevant, is evidence of Trump's cognitive decline.
I granted that. Did I not? I said,
so I just want a yes or no on this. So I just want a yes or no on this question from the blue asshole.
Bro.
Is that relevant? Yes or no?
God. You guys removed Biden from the general election ticket. You guys are the ones who conceded. First of all, that he is not well mentally. There's no comparison. Nina, shut the f*** up. You don't know anything. You were the least prepared for this panel, and you're hammered. Shut up.
Based off of what?
First of all, you have Gibbs on your side. Gibbs sounds like a idiot every time we talk. No, sorry, ricochet shot, but it's true, all right?
Gibbs was cooking. We do need an investigation because you guys need it. We need it for you guys, realistically.
We all called each other started. We've gotten that out of the way.
All right,
Let's move on.
So
now we broke the ice. Now we can really talk.
Hey folks, big news. On the 28th of March, I'll be doing Tim Pool's Culture War Show. We'll be discussing Mahmoud Khalil and other constitutional issues with the Trump administration. I highly encourage you to watch it. It'll be running from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Tim's channel. And if you haven't liked, commented, and subscribed on this channel, please do so. It'll really help me out.
Tonight's topic is Joe Biden's pardons and Trump declaring them null and void, in part because it was signed by AutoPen. The scandal here, or the alleged scandal, is that Biden did not know he had signed these pardons because it was signed due to AutoPen, which is a device that would sign the signature of the president, etc. And this means, according to Trump, that these pardons no longer have the force of law. And that's what we're going to be covering today. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to give the mic over first to Admiral Gibbs to explain his position, and then we'll just go around the room. But I got to use a little bit of boys' room, so no slurs while I'm gone. Gibbs, take it away.
Go ahead, Joby. All right, cool. I'm Admiral Gibbs. You can find me everywhere as Admiral Gibbs if you don't already know me. I host the Debate Championship Series and the Give Me a Break podcast. Fun stuff. We'll be doing those the next 2 days at 5 o'clock on Thursday and then 7:30 on Thursday as well. All right, so tonight we are here to talk about the AutoPen controversy. It is clear to me that the Dems today either don't understand or are purposely choosing not to engage what the Republicans' argument is about AutoPen. That argument is that it was used fraudulently by unelected bureaucrats, and the entire Biden presidency was built on a lie, and thus should be nullified and charges pressed. Before continuing, let's define the word fraud. I have here in my hands a Black's Law dictionary, and as any reputable lawyer will tell you, it is the definitive authority for legal definitions. Fraud is defined as a knowing misrepresentation or knowing concealment of a material fact made to induce another act to his or her detriment. All right? The dishonest Dems here would like you to believe that there's no legal basis for any of this. However, this is just more of the same tactic. The Dems are, as evidenced by their most recent, totally organic and not at all organized rally in which GPS cell phone data shows these people have been at multiple protests. 80% of these people have been at multiple protests and rallies in other states. Still believe lying and gaslighting the American public is the way to win elections. I'm here today to expose them for the lying, hypocrite, snake oil salesmen they are when they attempt to bamboozle you, the American people, with their baby back bullshit. This debate is simple. We know for a fact that Biden wasn't mentally fit to be president from almost day one. Who was running the White House? We don't know. WIC TV here has said multiple times on panels that I have been on while Biden was in office that he was okay with these phantom bureaucrats leading the nation for him as long as it got shit done. At least WIC was honest about it. I have major problems with this idea that unelected shadow government officials could somehow run the executive branch using the president's authority. However, the dishonest Dems seem to like the idea of phantom officials having the power to use AutoPen to accomplish their nefarious goals.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it. Nina, hi.
Hi.
What's your thoughts?
My thoughts on this is I agree with Wick, or sorry, not Wick. I agree with the Gibbs that it is very simple. Which what I mean by that is that it's very, very simple. That establishing AutoPen as some sort of illegitimate source of signing would be catastrophic and is very dumb. The first president to use a form of AutoPen was literally Thomas Jefferson. So if we're going to try and talk about like overturning everything that's ever been signed with AutoPen, I think that's some silly Billy shit, I would like to call it. I think that Gibbs's argument starts off like to kind of counterbalance or goes against his own position because Trump uses AutoPen. Are you trying to say that everything that he did Like, do you think that he signed 2,000 plus pardons directly? Come on, like you're being silly. And you're totally undermining your own position. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is like a complete distraction. It's just another one of the authoritarian things that Trump does constantly because he doesn't have any consistency. He doesn't believe in any actual organization. He doesn't believe in our establishments. And it's just stupid.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Pentuple.
Hi. So hopefully your argument isn't against the auto pen, because nobody's making that argument. The auto pen is valid. The issue is whether the use of the auto pen is valid. Well, the argument we're basically having here today is about forgery. If somebody has control of the auto pen, does this make them an agent of the president? Does this give them the right to assert the president's signature to things that the president did not explicitly and directly consent to? That is the question here. So nobody's arguing that everything signed by auto pen is invalid. The problem is that there's no evidence that Biden was even aware of these. And if there was, that evidence would be very easy to provide. I think it's very telling that the other side is dismissing the burden of proof or trying to argue about auto pens in general, when all we are asking for is evidence that Biden honestly, we need evidence that Biden initiated this as the president, but we'll just accept evidence that he was even aware, even though I think there's an issue with them just giving away preemptive pardons and then bringing it to the president to be signed. But as a matter of principle, the auto pen is a reflection of the president's consent. Only the president can do this. So nobody has an issue if he's using the auto pen. I have no issue with him using the auto pen, whether he's abroad or whatever. It has to still reflect the consent of the president for that specific thing, as if he had read that document in full, not just like a general thing. This is the signature of the president, and that's what it reflects. So every use of the auto pen has to be approved by the president. This doesn't require a paper trail, but it will run you into problems if later on you need the paper trail to prove that the auto pen was valid. There's legal questions about whether an auto pen is self-authenticating in the same way as a wet ink signature. You can't forge your own signature. That's self-authenticating in court. I don't know if that same applies to an auto pen signature. So all we're asking for is some sort of authority. And I think ultimately, regardless of the whole legal issue, the only truth I want to know is if Biden actually wanted to sign off on these pardons. These are different pardons than usual because they're preemptive. We don't even know why these people need the pardons. I'd be curious if the people here defending these pardons today will continue to defend them after we know why they might have needed them. And I will say, just to set up for later discussion, I do expect that the path of challenge for these pardons will be a prosecution of somebody who claims to have a valid pardon, and then the court will have to look at the validity of that pardon. And I think the burden of proof could arguably fall on the person who's claiming that they have a valid pardon. They're going to have some sort of evidence that shows that the pardon was valid, and with AutoPen, it's not self-authenticating. So I want to know if Biden approved it. I think that if he hasn't, there's a serious question if people are signing off preemptive pardons without the president's consent or knowledge. That's an enormous issue. So I want to know the truth, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for being here, and we'll get into it as we go. Finally, last but certainly not least,
yeah, those were the two stupidest opening arguments that I've ever heard in my life. I mean, let's start with Gibbs, who ventured into absurdity by, first of all, citing Black's Law Dictionary, saying it's the definitive source of all things legal in the United States. When it's like a treatise, it's a dictionary made by like a 19th century English person. It's informative for a lot of our legal principles, but it's certainly not binding. But I'll accept, the definition of fraud as laid out by the Black's Law Dictionary. Gibbs didn't even attempt to show how the elements of fraud are met out in his particular case for Biden. He didn't explain how and these pardons were inducing something. He didn't explain what the lie was, and so just as a threshold matter, Gibbs' whole citation is stupid. Doesn't do the work of explaining how the analysis of how exactly that framework is applying to the pardons at issue. Both him and the other guy, I don't know his name, ventured into the irrelevant, like the merits of the policy behind the pardons. Who gives a That's not what we're here to argue about, whether or not the pardons were just or not. So notice every time that they say something irrelevant, like, do you agree with the pardons or you not agree with the pardons? I think Gibbs started talking about some like random other policy shit, about, where people were in time and space and other matters. So anything that's not about whether or not these pardons are valid is beside the point, completely irrelevant. And let's talk about burden of proof here. The burden of proof is on the people asserting the claim. It's you guys who are saying these pardons are invalid. You have to adduce some evidence that these were not authorized by Joe Biden. I'm glad that I guess you guys aren't saying that prima facie the use of the auto pen is not justifiable. That would be like an untenable position. So I'm glad you're not going that sort of crazy, but what evidence do you have? Because the pardons themselves, purport to be from Joe Biden. Joe Biden says they're from him. The administration announces from Joe Biden. So what evidence do you have that they were not from Joe Biden? And when that evidence is produced, we can have a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, this is some like air quote lawyer bullshit. He didn't even address the issue that we brought up. It's really funny for someone that's such a highly reputable lawyer to totally avoid the legal issues at hand that we brought up. He literally put words in my mouth, didn't respond to anything I actually said, which was, and this is the crazy part, I posted about 5 articles in the Discord that we're all in about Biden's cognitive decline. We know Mike Johnson, okay, I admit he's a partisan actor, and says, but he still said is a direct source, direct eyewitness testimony that claims Biden himself said, hey, I didn't know I did this. That's direct source. We know that. We have evidence already that he doesn't. Then we have reports from Biden administration officials saying that he is not cognitive. And they were basically one of the biggest cover-ups of the last 20 years. They were covering up that he was
is
not
it your
able
position,
to do
yes or no, that these pardons are invalid?
Is it your
position, yes or no, that they are invalid?
My position is that the Biden
is it your position, yes or no,
listen, you can keep repeating the same thing, or you can let me finish. Anyway, and my last thing is basically, like I said in my opening, if you had been listening, maybe write some stuff down. Terrible lawyer skills. But if you are listening, I said repeatedly that the Biden administration was based on a fraudulent claim. Once again, was based on a fraudulent claim that he was even cognizant to be president. He shouldn't even been president.
Is it your position that the pardons are invalid?
And we have reports that he was not mentally
stable. Gibbs, that the pardons are invalid?
Do you believe that writing a check for a grandmother with Alzheimer's is a valid check?
Very easy question.
Is writing a check for somebody with Alzheimer's as the executive
very simple question.
A valid check?
Very simple question.
Is that a valid check? Is that a valid check?
Very simple question.
We can just keep doing the same thing. I'm not going to let you do this bully bullshit.
Is it your position
listen, it's a very simple question.
Pardons are invalid?
Is as the executive of state, if my grandmother has Alzheimer's and I write a check fraudulently,
is it your position, yes or no? Is it your position?
Okay, enough. You're all talking over each other. No one can hear. Shut up, Gibbs. Shut up, Pituple. Shut up, Pisco. All of you. Okay. The question, and I am curious too. I think Pisco asked a good question. Which of you, right here, think that so yes, Pentuple at least will.
Gibbs, yes or no?
Yes. But here's the
I want to hear an answer from Gibbs to that question. Gibbs, yes or no?
I want to hear an answer from you about if I write a check for my grandmother who's got Alzheimer's, is that a valid check? You're not going to answer that because you know that I'm right. That's because you're a weasel and you're going to run. But of course. But go ahead.
Is it your position, yes or no? Shut the
Is the check for an Alzheimer's? Is the check for a grandmother with Alzhard's a valid check? If I write it to steal her money.
You won't even answer a basic question about your position.
Can you answer that question? Why are you
low cow Gibbs? You're an idiot.
You're low cow. You're an idiot. You can't even answer my question. Is that a valid check? Yes or no?
Is it your position, Gibbs, that the pardons are valid?
Is it your position that's a valid check?
Is it your position that the pardons are valid or invalid?
Alzheimer's grandma, is that's a valid check?
Is it your position?
I'm just going to keep asking.
I'm going to mute you. Okay, I'm going to mute Pisco for a minute too. Okay, gang, and I'm going to mute you if you keep talking, Pitzel. We can't just do this asking the same question over and over and over and over again. Both of you are drive me insane. We have to move on at some point, right? We have to have a conversation. The question at hand, again, does anyone here think that the pardons are invalid?
Can I answer this? Yes. I'm prepared to answer this if you guys allow me. So, yes, if the president was unaware. When Pisco dismissed the potentiality of fraud here, I want to ask Pisco, if the president was not aware that his autopen was used on these pardons, would you consider that fraud or not?
So, if the president was unaware that autopen was used?
No. If the president was unaware that his signature was being affixed to these pardons. I don't care about autopen. I've not made the argument that autopen is any different than his signature as long as he's consented. It reflects his consent. So our question is here, did the president consent to these pardons being signed? Did he direct the use of the autopen?
That has nothing to do with the signature. I mean, what is a legal citation that a signature is required? Wait. What is the legal citation? Wait. Excuse me. Sorry. I want to answer. I'm answering the question. What is the legal citation?
That's not the point.
Wait. So whether he's aware of a signature or not isn't the important question. The question is he aware of the pardon? That's the question. So
this is even more.
I'll ask you very simply. I'll ask you very simply. Do you have a source? Do you have a legal citation? Do you have a legal citation for for a signature being needed to effectuate a legal pardon? Yes or no? You have a source for that?
No, in fact,
Yes or
that
no?
doesn't
Do you have
go
a source
to
for that?
argument.
The answer should be yes, no, or I don't know.
How to do this? It was a signed document with the auto pen.
Sir,
we didn't have Biden making this declaration.
I asked you a very simple question.
We weren't talking about that.
Wait, I asked you a very simple question. Wait, I asked you a very simple question. Do you have a legal citation for the notion that a signature
You didn't answer this question.
Wait.
Kelly wants to answer all this question, but won't answer ours.
I don't know what's wrong with your mic, Temple. I don't know what's wrong with your mic, Temple.
It's cutting out quite a bit.
Your mic.
It's about the consent of the president.
So I have it's a simple question. Do you have a legal citation for the notion that a signature is required to make a pardon valid? What is that citation?
Okay. Are you ready for my response? No, because you don't need it. All you need is the consent of the president. What we are challenging here is that there is no consent of the president. An auto-penned piece of paper is not the same as him declaring it. We have the potentiality here where somebody auto-penned the paper, no presidential declaration or consent. If that is the case, then yes, this is fraud and this is an issue.
No. But notice
it's a fraud perpetrated on the American people.
Your question was very simple. I mean, your question was I'm following your question. Your question was if he's unaware that his signature is being affixed or that an auto-pen
this is about the consent of
Wait. Let me finish what I'm saying and show how you idiot you are. So you asked me a question, which was Biden aware
you defeated your own argument. You've been screaming because you can't even keep it.
It's really easy.
Yeah, you can't answer a question.
So just to be clear,
that's for a claim. You
are all talking over each other constantly, and no one can understand a word anyone is saying. Let Pisco finish.
You're trying to confuse people because you think being an attorney makes people confused, but you're not actually
making simple. So because they're very reckless with their language, I'm answering the question as asked. He asked, does Biden need to have knowledge of specifics of like the formalities of the signature affixation? I say no, he does not have to have any knowledge of the signature process. And so I was answering the question that I was answering the question that you asked. So the answer. Wait. You can go back in the VOD. You can go back in the VOD.
Can you get
wait. You can
to that?
You can go back and
skip over to.
So I wasn't done talking. I wasn't done talking. I wasn't done talking. So you can go back in the VOD. So you can go back in the VOD. You can go back in the VOD. You can.
My guy, we cannot hear you.
You can go back in the VOD. You can go back in the VOD if you want. We can take turns if you want.
Yeah, your mic, it's not letting you talk. Right? It's every time you try to talk over people, it pops and no one can understand what you're saying. I don't know if it's a mic you're using or what, but it's making this conversation really hard.
So the point is simple, right? I was answering your question directly. You said if Biden didn't know that his auto pen was being used or his signature was being... Why do you keep interrupting?
Your mic keeps fucking up every single time that you speak when somebody else is speaking.
Because he's not answering the question. He's doing a dishonest thing.
You're hamstringing yourself. Yeah, I know he's doing that, but I'm just saying.
Oh, good. So we know that...
When you're done yapping, I'll be able to speak because it's a Discord issue, like I said. But the point is, if the president was aware and consented to this, I'm not talking about consent to the use of the auto pen. That's not what anyone's talking about. You're trying to make this distracting legal argument.
Just to be clear,
let him make the argument.
I'm perfectly willing to answer your question, and I was going to get to the merits of the meat of what's going on here at the end. But I just want to be clear that you're being imprecise, and I'm showing that to the audience. I don't think that Biden needs to have specific knowledge of how the signature is being affixed. That was your question. He has to have knowledge, obviously, of the pardon to effectuate it. I totally agree with that. But the burden of proof, is on you guys. You guys who claim that the pardons. Wait, excuse me. That the pardons are invalid. What is your evidence that he was not aware of the pardons?
We already know that.
I'll respond to that. Hold on, let me respond to that. I don't think that that's how this is actually going to be tested in front of a court. And I'll ask you, Pisco, because I'm not sure about this. I'm just asking you this as a thinking out loud. I think that the way this is going to come up is when somebody who claims to have a valid pardon is prosecuted. Somebody who's on the January 6th committee, for example, say Adam Schiff, gets charged and he claims to have a valid pardon. Is the burden of proof on his claim that his pardon is valid?
So we're talking the nature of this discussion right now. In this discussion right now, regardless. Wait. So first of all, I just want to be clear. I want to be clear. I think in that context, it will be the prima facie evidence of a pardon being proclaimed by the president. It'll be up to the Justice Department. In my opinion, it'll be up to the Justice Department to determine the burden of proof there and to actually. And you don't have any evidence to counter that. That's my intuition. That said, in the course of this conversation, you're making the claim, correct? And so you have the burden of proof, correct? Do you have the burden of proof, yes or no?
Not necessarily.
We already have proof, though. We already have proof.
That's why I just said.
Do you have the burden of proof, or do you not have the burden of proof?
I already have proof of what I'm claiming.
How is this being tested in front of the court, do you think? Do you think Trump's
I'm asking you in the context of this conversation. In the context of this conversation, do you have the burden of proof or not?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Okay.
I have all proof. I have proof for everything.
So what is your proof?
You have no proof of anything.
Hold on. If Adam Schiff gets charged and he claims to have a valid pardon, is the burden of proof on the claimant there or not?
Wait, I just told you that. I think the Justice Department. I just answered that question. Wait. I just answered the question. I just answered that question.
Tests this question.
I just wait. So I just answered that question. So you weren't listening, right? You weren't listening. So I'm going to answer the question again. I said in that context, you're not listening, and you have a problem with listening. And it's now the second or third time. So I've already answered that question, and I'm going to answer it. So I've already answered that question. I'm going to answer it again. I said in that context, I would expect the Department of Justice to have to adduce evidence that shows the invalidity of that pardon. However, I also said it's neither here nor there. Wait, let me finish my sentence. It's neither here nor is it there for the context of this conversation where both of you are making an affirmative claim. Your affirmative claim in this context, in this context, the burden of proof is on you, isn't it, to show that the pardons are invalid, correct?
No.
Well, how do you think the court is going to test this, Pisco?
No, he's won. Hold on. Hold on. Here's the thing. This is why Pisco wouldn't engage with my question earlier. I will answer. Well, see, here's the thing. We already have proof. We have eyewitness testimony.
Is the burden of proof on you?
Mike Johnson. We have testimony from aides, and this is why I'm saying that there needs to be an open investigation to whether. See, this is really.
Do we need an investigation, or do you have proof?
Do we need an investigation? Hold on. You just went on a whole rant.
You just said we need an investigation.
Do you think that
Hold on. Can I talk? You just gish out for 10 minutes.
You just said we need an investigation. Why would we need an investigation?
Can I talk? Can I talk? Are you afraid?
Okay, enough. Please,
I mean, I have an
oh my God, you guys are going to drive me crazy. Just real quick, everyone. Pentuple, you got to fix your audio, or else this conversation just won't go anywhere. Right? That's job one. It's not letting.
It's a Discord thing.
Okay, give me a second.
It's not a Discord thing.
Let me
finish.
happening with anybody else. But we can't keep doing this where we're just yelling over each other. It's not good content. It's not going to work. It's not going to work for the conversation. The question at hand is simply this. And again, Gibbs, you have said that you have evidence.
I have evidence.
You have evidence. Present that evidence, and then I want to give Nina a chance.
I have now posted 5 articles in both Discord in our group chat and in our in my group chat, in my regular chat. So there's 5 evidence that we have direct eyewitness testimony from people within the Biden administration and from Mike Johnson, whether or not you want to take him as a partisan actor or not. However, that is still direct eyewitness testimony. It's not hearsay. It's direct eyewitness testimony from people in this administration and Mike Johnson saying Biden was not cognizant of these decisions. Biden said he wasn't aware of it. Now, the argument that Pisco tried to make poorly, I might add, earlier was, this is the same as when Trump goes and signs 200 pardons with autopay. No. The difference is Trump comes out on a speech. Yes, you did. It was terrible. Anyway, Trump comes out and goes, hey, I actually claimed to get all these pardons. He goes, I came to get all these pardons done. I got all these guys off. There's a memo from Obama when he did the auto pin over the plane. We have paper trails for Trump. We have him claiming it. We know that he's cognizant. He's there. What we do know from Biden is we have a claim from multiple witnesses where they're saying Biden didn't know what was going on. They were running it and covering it up. We know that's a fact. We have claims from Mike Johnson saying this guy didn't even know about the pardons. That's crazy because this is a sitting, House member or senator that's saying these things, and he's going, hey, okay, president doesn't know. And we have this evidence. We have evidence. So that's why I'm saying we should have an investigation and see everybody that was covering this up and signing these things as unelected bureaucrats should be put on trial. It's funny that they're all okay with unelected bureaucrats, but then have a problem with somebody like Elon is running stuff. No, it's not irrelevant. It's speaking to your hypocrisy. No matter how many times you want to say it. You can keep saying it's irrelevant. I'm almost done. I got 1 minute to be finished. He's literally, you're sitting here being hypocritic and you're saying, all these things. And when I bring these up and I point out the American people are tired of y'all gaslighting and we want investigations to say, y'all go, irrelevant. Let me just go up and just scream. It is. I mean, that's a terrible debate tactic. You just look like an asshole saying these things. Because I guess this is why y'all lost the election. Because you don't care what the average people
what we're talking about. Why we lost the election is what we're talking about.
No, I'm just pointing out. I mean, I'm giving a point to why we lost. I mean, I know that you can't answer my question. Once again, my last question is, if there's a grandmother and she's got Alzheimer's, is it fraud if I go start writing checks out of her checkbook?
It depends on the state. It depends on whether it's authorized, right? So if someone with Alzheimer's tells you guys can hear me, right?
You're not.
Wait. So just to be clear, so the rules for mental capacity change between states. Do you agree with that? Yes or no, Gibbs?
Sure.
So if someone with mental decline is authorizing a son or daughter to sign a check, right, and that person is signing checks on behalf of them, then it would. I assume that's your hypothetical.
As the executor, that would be
that could be a very fact-laden, intense scrutiny over to what degree this person has mental capacity, to what degree this person,
So if I write a check for my grandma with my grandmother's money, she had Alzheimer's for a hot tub. That's not fraud.
Hang on a second. It's different if you're writing checks without any authorization from someone with Alzheimer's, then that would obviously be fraud, right? I would agree with that.
Right.
But if someone with Alzheimer's is authorizing you to sign checks, it's a more difficult situation. In a lot of cases,
we have a whole system for that.
Yeah, exactly, Nina. And in some cases, those contracts or checks are voidable, but not by themselves void. And so it's more complicated, and it's not an easy yes or no question, which is why you're trying to go there in the kind of messy situation. But really, the burden of proof is on you guys, right? The burden of proof is on you guys. You just said
we already have evidence.
I just want to be clear.
All we've asked for is a little evidence.
Let me finish my statement, Gibbs.
Stop.
So,
go ahead.
So you just said we, quote, need an investigation. So if
Absolutely.
we need an investigation, is it your position, yes or no, that it's been established that these are invalid pardons?
No, what is my position?
Yes
and I will
or
make
no?
it very clear. Hold on. My position, and I haven't claimed. I think they are invalid. That's my thoughts. However, my position is that we have enough evidence that shows Biden wasn't of cognitive mind. So he was no good, bad. He was Alzheimer's, dementia. So we know that.
So
we
why
already
do we
have
need
that
an
evidence. So what we need to do is
Why
have
do
an
we need an
investigation to see who was signing stuff.
Wait, why do we need an
What he was,
investigation?
what he was
why do we
lucid
need
for, what he wasn't.
If you want to
That's the
prove that
problem.
they are valid, you need an
We need
investigation.
an investigation.
Wait.
Do you not agree with
you want
that?
to prove that
Do you
Why are
think
you
that
afraid of an
Trump- do you think that
investigation?
Trump should be
Give it to
also
Nina.
subjected to this as well?
Sure,
No.
if he's not not a cognitive abilities, let's do it. Like I don't want to Alzheimer's.
Did you
patient
see
running
him
any
talking
office.
about like how Barron was super cool because he was able to figure out how to turn on a laptop after it was turned off? Like, you don't think that he sounds like a rambling old man? Like, if
No,
that's
he's
your
got-
Weren't you
argument,
just
then you're being crazy
gargling us
about
for
this. This is
relevancy here,
ridiculous.
and now you're talking about
Wait,
what the
that's
fuck?
relevant. Wait, hang on a
Well,
second.
I'm
That's
using
relevant.
your
sure.
argument,
Yeah, that's
though.
okay,
That's
okay.
right.
That's right.
Wait.
If that's relevant, draw the
I don't
connection, please.
actually
I'm
want
happy to
a
say
whole
what
I do think
fucking
Biden's
investigation
state
to
of mind
happen.
is
My point is showing
relevant.
how silly your argument is. Yo, so
because your
Trump's
argument
state of
was
mind
so
should be
fantastic.
relevant.
Opening was about, if we're going to invalidate these auto pens, we have to invalidate all of them.
Wait. Hang on a second.
We wrote
First
you
of
off
all,
immediately.
Do you think because you do like the dumb guy voice that actually makes your argument make sense?
No,
Like,
Everything
come
she
on,
said
can
has
you
been
actually
completely
engage?
Word
relevant.
for word.
Everything she said has been completely relevant. I'm happy to defend it. So she doesn't know what you're going to say before you say it, and so she's preempted and saying obviously it would be stupid to have this kind of blanket rule that auto pens are not allowed.
That's a good defense, Pisco. Very well done.
Wait, hang on a second. She can't predict what you're going to say, and thankfully you don't go to that extreme. But it is relevant. What is relevant because Trump
That was the subject of the
so it is the subject of the debate, 100%. And then to be clear, wait, because you just said what you said is irrelevant. It's perfectly relevant. So now I'm going to talk about what she just said, which was completely irrelevant, which is she asked, would this be a standard that you apply to Trump? And that's relevant, right? If you're going to apply the same standard to another president and their pardons.
What was this Barron Trump thing?
And the whole comparison is, well, what's the quantum of evidence that exists that Biden wouldn't be in the mental state enough to know about his own pardons? And you guys gave evidence of articles of people generally commenting on Biden's decline, which of course does not reach the level of Alzheimer's. Just to be clear, did not reach the
one
level
of the
Alzheimer's.
arguments was that he tripped.
Yeah, he tripped, or Mike Johnson,
Which
said,
is an indication.
By the way, what you
of the
presented,
decline.
what you presented, Gibbs, was not specific evidence towards pardons. He was talking about an executive action. That's what Mike Johnson was talking about. So literally, none
What
of the
I
evidence
presented was evidence of cognitive decline.
Yeah, you're speaking in generalities of Biden's cognitive decline, and what Nina presented to you, which is relevant, is evidence of Trump's cognitive decline.
I granted
I just want a yes or no. So I just want a yes or no on this question from the blue asshole.
Bro.
Is that relevant? Yes or no?
God.
Yeah, no, but it's not the relevancy.
Don't defend him, because that was a slide.
Hold on, wait, are you running the panel?
That was a slide. Wait, Gibbs, don't defend him. Wait, blue guy, whatever your name is, blue guy. I just want a yes or no question. Wait, blue guy. I just want a yes or no question. Do you agree, based on what I just said, that what Nina said was relevant? Yes.
No.
So
dude.
Explain how it's
You're
not
arguing
relevant.
that. Okay, you guys removed Biden from the general election ticket. You guys are the ones who conceded, first of all, that he is not well mentally. There's no comparison between Biden and Donald Trump.
You can say that. It's relevant.
We're talking about the what Nina just said being relevant or not being relevant. Now you're talking about how different Biden's cognitive state is to Trump's.
You guys are defending a system that would allow people to give out preemptive pardons without the president's knowledge.
So you're not willing to bite the bullet. So you made an unfair snipe. Isn't Trump's mental state relevant to testing the consistency of your standard? Isn't that relevant, sir?
Okay.
Yes or no?
Okay.
No.
Hold on. Stop. All of you, stop. I'm going to have to use a lot more moderation than I'd like to. Pentuple, stop talking when I'm talking. So, Pisco, I did ask you a question. Pentuple, I'm going to give you a chance to ask that question, and I'm going to ask Nina and Pisco not to interrupt you while you ask that question, but you got to extend them the same courtesy, right? So we're going to do this. We're going to do this, right? We're going to be a lot more formal because you guys can't handle the casual conversation, so we're going to be a little more formal than I normally am. You were being asked a question. I'll let Pisco repeat it if you need, and I'm going to give you the space and time to answer that question. And then, after you're done completely, we will let others respond and we will carry on the conversation.
Sure. So Nina raised the issue of consistency of standards, which I think you would agree is totally legitimate to apply in this situation. And what she raised was, well, would you want the same treatment of Trump? And wouldn't, in comparing the standards, Blue Guy, wouldn't it be acceptable and in fact relevant for Trump's cognitive decline to be a relevant issue to test whether you're being consistent? Isn't that relevant?
Okay. Sure, you guys could do the same thing and make the same claims, but there's a difference here. But you guys conceded it when you removed Biden from the general ticket. There's no question that everyone in this country knows Biden is not there mentally. We do not have that sort of even remote consensus with Trump. Only his most ardent opposition thinks that he's not mentally well. That's a bit convenient, isn't it? So no, I don't think that it's a perfect comparison, and I don't think it's relevant. I think you could say the same about Obama. I could make the same claim with Obama, of Obama's auto pen, but it's not a good argument. But what we do have with Biden is that he was removed. We have very good consensus that he wasn't really there mentally. We don't have that with Obama. We don't have that with Donald Trump. Sure, if you want to make the argument that we do with Trump, you can. I don't think a lot of people are going to buy that argument. But yeah, as far as consistency goes, sure. But what are we looking at right now? We're looking at the reality. You guys are defending a system where there's a potentiality for people who are in control of the auto pen to give out preemptive pardons without the president's knowledge or consent.
That's irrelevant. Wait. The preemptive nature of it is the preemptive nature here is not what we're here to discuss. Whether
that's what we're here to discuss.
We're not here to discuss the issue about whether or not the pardons are.
I know in a very partisan manner. No, the president that you like.
Oh my God! Nobody can hear what you're saying, my guy.
The issue of this debate is not whether or not preemptive pardons are invalid or valid. Agreed with that, Blue Guy?
No, that's true. I agree with that. Okay. It's a different question. It's separate.
Completely different question. So when you say you guys will defend a system of preemptive pardons, it has nothing to do with what we're here to discuss.
True.
It has nothing.
You are defending a system that allows this potentiality to occur.
To debate whether or not we're defending the system that allows for preemptive pardons. That's not what we're here to debate. We're here to debate whether these pardons are valid or not.
Talking about the auto pay controversy in general.
You're defending a system that potentially allows for somebody to use the auto pen as an agent of the president rather than as a directive of the president. That's the problem here. That's the problem we have issue with. It's not an agent of the president making decisions with the president's signature. He can only affix it to things that the president clearly indicates. I can't truth that.
You're not
That's all I care about.
You kind of full circled your ass back into having an issue with the auto pen. You realize what you just did, right?
Okay, here's the difference between a wedding signature and an auto pen. A wedding signature can't be forged. It's self-authenticating. An auto pen requires some sort of a verbal, any sort of directive from the president that indicates that the president consented to his signature being put on that. You can't just put the president's signature on things. You guys are defending a system.
That's not the case. Oh my God, we're going in circles here.
The president's signature onto things. That's all I'm saying. No, you haven't been keeping up with anything we talked about in this whole panel, so I'm not really concerned about what you think. But
well, maybe it's because I can't hear you because your mic's so f***ed up.
That's probably one of the reasons.
Wait, so okay. I just want to be clear here, right? So I think that the major issue here is whether or not these pardons are invalid. And by the way, when I say these pardons,
I'm okay with cognitive testing the presidents. By the way, I'm okay with that because I'm not afraid of Trump's.
That's cool. Thank you for that.
That was the question you asked.
He never fail any of that, so I don't know why you think that he did.
So the question is someone with Biden's state of mental decline, someone who's evincing Biden's state of mental decline, do you think that they have enough cognition in your mind to be allowed to sign contracts and enter into agreements, both of you?
Yes. If there was a directive from Biden, I would not have questioned this at all. All we are asking for is any evidence that Biden was aware of and knew about this happening.
Based on your totality of circumstances that you've seen, Biden, from what you just said, is mentally fit enough to sign on to agreements and to
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, he wasn't removed from the presidency. He had the authority to do it.
Gibbs, you don't agree with that. You think that Biden is not mentally fit enough to even sign a contract or a lease?
As a matter of law, he was fit. As a matter of what are we to believe his cognition was? I think that you guys removed him. You guys didn't.
But you agree, like that determination, the determination about whether or not he's the most suitable candidate and whether or not he should drop out of the race, that's a different question, isn't it?
No.
Than whether or not he's mentally fit enough to like.
Why was he not longer the most suitable candidate?
Let me actually ask the question.
Gibbs, why was he the most? Why was he not the most?
Ask the question, Gibbs. Gibbs, let me ask a question. Let me actually ask the question.
I mean, you can ask all the questions you want, but I want that question.
I can. And I'll give you the question afterwards. So I'm asking Blue Guy, I guess you too as well, which is, isn't the question about whether or not he should be the presidential nominee a different question than whether or not he meets the minimum threshold of competency to sign on to agreements? Aren't those different questions fundamentally? Yes or no?
Sure, yes? But there's still the point that goes to the question of whether Biden was aware of what was going on.
What's your evidence? If you have to remove the pardons, what is your evidence he wasn't aware of the pardons?
I already talked
about him. Where? Wait, no. What is your hang on? Because we don't presume things are valid. They're invalid, and you have to prove that they're valid. What is your evidence that it was valid? What is your evidence that he did something?
That's not how it works.
So now we're talking about burden of proof. You're making the claim, right? You're the ones making the claim that the pardons are invalid.
That works.
Wait, isn't the burden?
Yeah, it's not. The president did not consent to the signature.
Isn't the burden of proof on you?
The chief of staff.
Not what we're making the claim of.
Hypothetical. If the chief of staff affixes the president's auto pen signature to something without the president's consent, is that by default valid?
I would say that without the president's consent to sign something, that it's
that's
invalid.
The question.
Yeah, I would say that's invalid. But isn't the burden of proof on you? Wait, isn't the burden of proof on? Wait, isn't the burden of proof on you?
Blue Guy. Okay,
hold on.
You just accept the burden of proof.
Blue Guy, you have been forging my signature.
What?
You've been forging my signature.
What are you talking about?
You've been forging my signature.
You're forging your signature?
Prove that you haven't forged your signature.
Yeah. Should the burden of proof be on me or on you?
What are you talking about? What is this?
So the question she's presenting.
I will explain. We don't know what she's like. Hold on.
Doing me? What? I forged a signature of yours on like a draft.
I mean, this is how our laws work, my guy. I would have to prove that. Right? The burden of proof would be on me.
Do you really understand what she's getting at?
Do you agree? Do you agree with me that I would have to prove, or have the burden of proof on me, for me making the claim that you forged my signature?
Am I trying to hold you to the signature? Or am I trying to claim your signature is invalid?
She's making the claim. No. In the example, you can't even follow her in her hypothetical, which is you guys act so exasperated, like she's saying something ridiculous. She's very cleanly applying. She's very cleanly applying.
Gibbs bring up something irrelevant, you're so quick to point it out. Every time Nina says everything irrelevant, you have to figure out.
Irrelevant. What are you just saying? Shit right now?
I'm gonna be honest. It feels very sexist when you're like exasperated at the things she's saying, and like not. It does feel that way. No, it actually 100% does feel that way. So I'm just telling you.
Everyone's listening to this panel. It's not sexist.
No. So because what she said makes complete and total sense. She's applying this principle of burden of proof. She's saying that if it's the case, right? If it's the case that she made an allegation, right? If in this hypothetical world where she made an allegation of you, you're forging a signature. Who would the burden of proof be on?
You ready?
The person making the claim or the person who's
lawyer? Hey, you ready, lawyer? You ready? It depends.
Wow.
It depends. It's a good answer. It depends on 50 million other factors that you didn't give me.
So
that's
why. You give me. Hold on, just for the sake of
no, I just accused you of it. I'm gonna go take you to court for you forging my signature.
Please, everyone. Gibbs, I see your hand.
Stop. You
Stop. Gibbs, I see your hand. We'll get to you in a second. But again, to be clear, to maybe get this off this circle, so we can all be on the same goddamn page, right? Can you give us an example, Pentuple? I'm asking you directly. Can you give me an example where if Nina makes a claim that you forged her signature, right, that you would have to prove that you did not? Can you give us an example of where that would be the case?
Yeah, I could, but I don't. There's no reason for me to spend the time doing that right now. It's not relevant. Look, Pisco dismissed this earlier argument, which was much more relevant, is about how this could actually be tested in court, which is someone claiming you have a valid pardon gets prosecuted. He thought that was totally out of bounds. That's totally irrelevant. But now, what about basic contract law questions? Are you joking?
Wait. So in the contract,
Yeah,
I'm happy to address what you just said. I mean, it's a lot of it's incoherent, but so you brought the example of how would this actually be raised in a court of law, and so
it's interesting, right?
I assume in a situation in which the Justice Department is prosecuting an individual, they would have the indictment. The indictment wouldn't mention the pardon, and the initial burden, right? It'd be maybe a burden shifting framework where the initial burden to present a presumptively valid pardon that has been announced by the administration, there would be some threshold to prove that in fact you were pardoned, but that threshold would be a minimal threshold in the court of law where you just present the pardon, the prima facie valid pardon that has the signature on it that was presented by all accounts the executive branch, and then the burden to shift to show that this was that he's incoherent or mentally incompetent. It wouldn't be like the defendant has to prove that Joe Biden was competent when he signed it. It would be a situation where the Justice Department has the burden to prove that it's invalid, and so that's a situation where I can imagine that the fact of a pardon being some minimal barrier or threshold that the defendant has to prove. What we have here is a different situation. What we have here, what we're talking about, is a claim that you made, right? A claim you made. In the hypothetical, it's that someone is forging your signature, but in reality now it's that Biden's pardons were invalid. What's your evidence for that? And don't you have the burden of proof?
Well, it's interesting because that's what I want to talk about. And this is the whole point of this. And this is why it's really funny when you were trying to dismiss this earlier, because I've sat here and I said, hey, we need to open investigations. Why do we need an investigation? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we already have evidence that Biden didn't know about these pardons and some of these executive orders. We have direct eyewitness testimony. And if Mike Johnson's willing to go up on the court of law and swear under oath that's
pardons are an executive action.
And listen, you can do all you want, but let me finish. We said we have direct evidence. What I want is an investigation. Hold on.
Let's go one by one. Why don't we go one by one? Why don't we go one by one?
Let me just finish. Let me finish, and we can go one by one. So hold on. We have direct evidence from what's his name, Mike Johnson, that he said it was whatever. We have evidence from reports from aides that he wasn't killing. So why? Hold on. No, it's not a gish gallop.
Yes, it is.
Let him ask his question. Hold on.
So what I'm asking is real simple, right? I, as an average American, think, hey, if grandma can't sign a check and I sign a check for her, it's forgery 9 times out of 10. Yeah, there's some special exceptions. But if I do it, why would we want, in this case, Biden, who might not be mentally capable, and I will even grant you, let's go mentally test Trump too. I don't give a shit. Let's test them all, that we can go test them, see if they're mentally capable. And if he was failing this test, because we also have evidence after the debate, that's part of the reason, a significant part of the reason why they pulled him. We all know that. So we know his mental health was declining. At what point do we have just Bob signing checks for the president and orders? We need to investigate this. And if there is enough evidence that he didn't convict, because here's where the burden of proof comes in. We just need, all we're asking for is either memos stating he knew, maybe we break out the recordings from the Oval Office where he stated on record. Why are you so against them providing recordings of him granting permission for this to be done or having the memos posted? If these things exist, that's what the investigation would cover, and then it would free all this up and we'd all shut up. But y'all are so terrified of this. Why?
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do that with Trump too.
Sure. Wait a second.
Cool. I have an answer. I have an answer for Pisco.
Can we respond to the question? So first, you're conflating two things. I think both Nina and I would agree. There's a certain level of mental incompetence where we would presume any action taken to be invalid because you're not getting the intent required, the volitional act required to effectuate some kind of executive prerogative. So I imagine oftentimes Trump will say, I mentally declassified something, or I did something implicitly in what I do. I mean, all of us, I think, agree that there's some requirement of a volitional act or some kind of knowing and deliberate action for us to adduce evidence of what's going on here. So when you bring up the grandma example, in a situation in which there really isn't competency for this person to get into any agreement whatsoever, and there's no power of attorney or anything like that set up for you to do something on someone's behalf, and you're just signing checks, that raises an issue where I think, by and large, if you don't have the authority to do something, it is invalid. That said, the whole thing you're trying to prove—
That's what Pisco just said. He just
let me answer your question.
The thing is, they do have the authority.
The whole thing that you're trying to prove isn't that in some cases certain actions will be invalid if you reach a certain threshold of mental incompetency. You're trying to prove that he is in fact mentally incompetent, was not aware of these pardons, and you're so terrified of going one by one on your pieces of evidence because standing by themselves it's weak. So when you point to the Mike Johnson, you have this is in actual testimony, eyewitness account. He's not saying that Biden said anything with respect to a given pardon. He's talking about an executive action, and even the fact that Biden would say something like, "I didn't know anything about the executive action," should elucidate that he has some mental competence incompetency about what he remembers and what does not remember. We have to remember, right? Whatever threshold of mental incompetency we would need to make this voidable, it's got to be a sufficiently high bar. There are a lot of old people in this country.
Wait, did you just say if I don't remember something, that's proof of mental competency? But if they have Alzheimer's, they don't know what happened
yesterday. Did you read the articles you posted? Because I was reading what you guys were talking earlier.
I've read them.
What their arguments were.
I understand that, Nina. That's not the point. The point I'm making is I'm saying he's mentally incompetent. He's mentally incompetent.
Oh my God.
We direct evidence.
Hold on. Like if quickly finish.
Yeah, it'll be quick. We have direct evidence he's incompetent. I'm okay with testing all these old.
We have direct evidence that Trump's incompetent.
We don't, but we have direct evidence from Biden in a much more substantial way.
I can't believe I said that.
Than anything that Trump's done or whatever. That's not even a debatable thing. You can say it because you're partisan, whatever. So we have evidence from both sides. So why we need an investigation? And here's what we're asking.
Wait, why do we need an investigation then?
We made all these other things. We've unclassified shit before. We've done this.
So
why
do we need an investigation?
Now at this point, we're asking why are y'all not willing to provide either the written memos or the voice, the recordings of the president?
Why do we need one?
Like transcript form, proving that he.
Why do we need any investigation ever?
Listen. Oh, I'm getting finished. I'll tell you why. I'm almost done. I know y'all keep interrupting me. Draws it out. All we're asking for is a memo or several memos, and we're asking for some voice recordings or transcripts of those recordings. Proving that he ordered these things because Trump has come out and claimed these things. We have evidence.
I'd like to challenge Pisco on something legal that we said a few minutes ago before we get too far from it.
On the other side,
Gibbs, I'd really like some evidence that you have not been forging my signature.
I mean, sure. We can also. Can you find one document where I actually forged it in my handwriting? Or with any kind of discernible skill, because we know there were other pins done.
Why do we need an investigation? You said Gibbs, you just said that Biden is not mentally competent to sign these agreements. You agree? You said that, right? Wait.
And now we need an investigation to prove that.
So if he's not wait, do you need to prove it or is it established?
It's generally established. Yeah, we have evidence.
So you, in your opinion, Biden is not competent to sign agreements, right?
My opinion. I am not.
Is it established? Yes or no, Gibbs?
Wait. Hold on. This is a real weaselly thing.
I'm not going to get distracted. Is it established?
If I go up there and give an expert testemony, is that enough that I go as a layperson that hey, Gibbs' expert testimony on Biden's mental inabilities? I mean, my granddad had Alzheimer's, and I can tell that Biden has the same thing going on.
You guys are like the same coin, but like different sides.
Yeah, except I'm correct, and that's why he ended up being wrong.
Answer the question. The question is simple, right? Has it been established that Biden is not mentally fit to sign agreements?
It has been established that he was mentally incompetent and not able to do stuff, and we need to investigate.
He couldn't face trial.
If it's been established, he couldn't face trial. So like that's a good point. Yeah.
So if it's been established, what evidence could be produced that would change your mind about that? In an investigation?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we would need to look into that and see what evidence y'all could
I'm asking you right now. If it's been
established,
I
don't
know.
Wait.
So if it's been
cover 6,000 possibilities.
He's so scared to get on this point because it crushes him.
Sure.
If it's been established, if it's been established that he's not mentally capable enough to have agreements, by your own words, that's been established. What evidence would change your mind in an investigation?
Well, here's the cool thing about being an intelligent individual. I will answer that.
Let him answer it. Let him answer it.
Yeah, I'm an intelligent enough individual that if there's substantial enough evidence that I was wrong, I'll bite a bullet on that. I'll go, okay, cool. It looks like he was cognitive. However,
what would that evidence look like?
I don't know. This is maybe where you can call me Weasley. I don't know what that evidence would look like. However, there is a burden of proof that I would like to meet but I am not some all-seeing God, despite me being prophetic and always being right. I am not some all-seeing God that can just look into these reports and see what it is. However, with the substantial amount of evidence that we have currently of his cognitive decline, I am predisposed, based off what I have observed and what I have researched, that he is on the decline to the point that I don't think he was
he's getting old.
Able to
what do you mean?
Exactly. So if he was in cognitive decline and he was not aware of these decisions,
what are you talking about?
Then those absolutely should be null and void.
Why are you saying if?
We didn't elect. Because
not
the legal standard
you said it's established. You can't say
his incompetence. Are you arguing that Gibbs' standard is what we should apply to all law when it regards to incompetence?
We have other people.
You're arguing that.
Hold on. We have other people.
No, I'm asking for an investigation to prove it definitively.
We have other people who
everybody.
Okay, we have other people who want in, so I want to give the mic to the other people. Nina, you haven't got a chance in a while. We're gonna give it to Nina, and then Pentuple, you can ask your question. I know you're jonesing for it. So Nina, you haven't had the mic in a while. Here you go.
I didn't really have anything directly. I think that you're being very silly right now, Gibbs, with all of this shit, because you know that you're calling me partisan, which, classic bullshit, where you just don't
I agreed with you. I said let's touch the
Biden,
ball.
so you just want to shit on him because you want to win this argument or whatever. Like, but you know you're being silly. Come on, like really, like
how,
you
Nina,
really
how am I
think
being
that
silly
any of
when
this?
I said let's hold it to the same standard?
You're completely inconsistent. You're
How? I
completely
said hold Trump to the same
inconsistent with your
standard.
logic. Pisco's been very obvious about the way that he's showing that how you're
obviously
inconsistent with
weaselly.
your logic. Like, yeah, you just admitted to being weaselly.
No,
So you little weaselly little liar, bro. Like what?
I'm not being weaselly at all. I'm staying consistent
You're
to my
weaselly
point.
as fuck, bro.
How
you
would
don't
I
actually
agree
give a
with
shit
you?
about
Nina,
this.
hold on. How am I being weaselly?
Let me ask this. Let me ask this. Hold on.
You're the one who said it.
Gibbs, if there was an article, perhaps in a news organization, where Biden is quoted saying he was planning to do these pardons, would that be enough for you?
Yes.
No. Good question.
For me, it would.
No. And
can I go to? I just wanted because I want to talk to Pisco about a point we made like 20 minutes ago. Yep. But you were talking about when we bring this in court, right? And it's like, okay, you have to produce evidence of your pardon, and they would just produce this written auto-penned pardon. But like we had both agreed earlier, the pardon's not actually about the writing. The president could declare a pardon; it doesn't actually have to be in writing, right? True. So all we have for evidence of it is the auto-penned writing. But what we actually need evidence of is the president's consent and knowledge. So a tweet would actually suffice. If Biden had tweeted out that he wanted to do these pardons, that would have been good enough to me. What we're saying is that this auto-pen pardon is not proof of the president's knowledge and consent, and that's the issue. It's all about that issue.
That you just yourself, because if you say that a tweet is enough from if you say that a tweet...
No, I'm saying a tweet could be a clear enough. Well, okay, sure, you caught me. You caught me. Hold on, Pisco, let me finish. Pisco, you caught me. Whoa, hold on. You caught me if you challenge whether the tweet was actually penned by them. But assuming the tweet was, I'm saying we need a clear indicator directly from the person. Well, okay, sure. If that's hypothetical, yes, Pisco, you're right. You got me on. But what I am saying. No, hold on. The point I'm making to you is that the question of evidence here is the consent and knowledge of the president, not the writing. The writing is not solely evidence of this consent and knowledge. That's the problem.
So here's the issue, and I am definitely going to address. I agree, it's the issue of consent.
If we don't have this paper, how do you? Okay, here. Let me ask you this question. Let me flip it. If we don't have this paper, how do you prove?
I'm going to make it no matter what. So, but go ahead.
No, how do you prove that Biden authorized these pardons without this auto-pen signature? Do you have anything else?
How do you prove that Trump has not done that? Like, this is
Nina,
insane.
holy shit. Nina.
Pisco really wants to make
Drink
this.
Less.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to make. So first of all, the burden of proof is not on me, but I will address your argument about why I think there's prima facie evidence to suggest that these pardons had the effect that they did. Number one, there is, as Wick was suggesting with the question, I don't know, that should have been a signal to you. There is reporting that he was discussing this and debating all of these pardons internally, and I don't know why you don't credit those reports and the fact that because
Biden could go on and have plenty of discussions about potential pardons. That doesn't mean he's consented to the final decision.
Yeah, no.
Nina, shut the f up. You don't know anything. You were the least prepared for this panel, and you're hammered. Shut up.
Based off of what?
So the report, there is reporting that indicates that they were having these discussions and ultimately arrived at a conclusion that the president made. I mean, that reporting exists. You can deny it if you want to, but that reporting exists. That's number one. Number two, the fact that this actually came, from the president. If you can provide other instances, it came from his office where, the president was affirmatively not involved in that decision, then maybe you could make that argument for these particular pardons. But I think that prima facie, something that comes out of the president's office, I'm going to assume came from the president. Same thing with Trump. I don't imagine that Trump wrote down every law or every executive action. In fact, I pretty much know he didn't. He certainly didn't read all these executive actions that are being tossed in front of him. But when he signs them and they have the force of law, the presumption is he knows about them. He knows what's in them, and that's a presumption that you have to rebut. So there's and by the way, you said it's self-authenticating to have a signature. I don't know what the force of law is on that, but another evidence.
That's just federal rules of evidence, right?
Other evidence that's self-authenticating is official public releases of documents. Those are self-authenticating as well. A presidential pardon, even with an auto pen, is self-authenticated in the same way, on the same basis, under the federal rules of evidence. And so,
depends what you're trying to authenticate. What are you trying to authenticate? The pardon or the validity?
I'm not going to forget my point, which was you just said that if he tweeted something about it, I think that would do that would do the bill. But the truth is,
if we knew that he had tweeted it,
but the truth is, if he had tweeted something to that effect, and he has made public statements about those pardons, if he did that, you'd just be like, well, he didn't write that. And the truth is,
well, we could accuse of that. Yeah, we could accuse of that. That would be a claim. No, that's not an inconsistency. That's a good point, Pisco, but it's not an inconsistency. Nina, shut the fuck up, please.
Why are you being so rude to me? Can we have some decorum here?
Yeah, I don't know why you're being so rude.
Good question. Yeah, why are you?
I'm sorry. It's just annoying. Like, she's making no sense. It's just like, it's so annoying. Her entire presence here is pointless.
I guess. Like, what the f*** is wrong with you?
Hold on, just real quick. The entire presence of everyone on this panel is because I invited them. Okay, everyone is here because I specifically invited you. Okay, now you may not like the other guests. I don't always like the guests I invite. That's true, right? But come on.
I understand what you're doing. You're appealing to the sexist cope because you know that you're getting blown out by Pisco right now and us together, and that's just how you have to handle it because you were low IQ.
Am I allowed to keep this VOD on Twitch? Is there issues with this?
Why? What's against
TOS? What would be the problem?
Can't even speak.
She's speaking. What are you talking about?
Are you talking?
I don't care.
All right, let's go. The question that I think that what this really boils down to is that, and like I agree with you on anything that shows evidence of Biden's knowledge and intent. Like, I think that's the issue. Whether we dive through all this, would you agree with me that if somehow we both came to the conclusion, based on public evidence, that Biden had no idea that these pardons were signed with his auto pen, that you would agree they're not valid?
Well,
because then I think we have the same position ultimately. So if you would agree with that,
I think there's a nuance there. So in general, I would agree with that. But if, for example, and Gibbs brought this up before, and I wanted to or either one of you did, and I think it's an interesting point. If I had evidence that he had cognition that he was signing something, right, that would be sufficient enough as well, right? Like, if you sign up to the terms and conditions of iTunes, right, you probably don't have full awareness of all the terms therein, but you kind of assume the risk when you sign something. So I would say there's two ways in which I would say that.
Can I ask you a question?
Wait, just let me finish. There's two ways in which I say.
Let him finish.
Yeah, if he had direct knowledge of his signature, where he said, yes, okay, I'll sign whatever this is. I don't really know what's in it. I don't know who's being pardoned, but I'll sign it because, whatever pardons. I trust you on the advice. I'm just going to pardon them. That would be enough for me. He wouldn't need to know the specifics of the actual pardons themselves. But if he is not involved
legally, you're wrong on that.
Wait, why do you mean?
The OLC in 2005 declared that is not the case.
I want to ask a question.
You should read the 2005 Office of Legal Counsel opinion on that because you're wrong.
So you think the president? You think the president?
The president would need a lot more specifics than that. What you just described, yes, and that's clearly indicated in the opinion.
So you think the president couldn't issue a pardon to the effect of this? Everyone who's involved in January 6th type activities, everyone around in that vicinity who's involved in any crimes against the United States, they're all pardoned. You would say that is not.
No, they would have to break. There would have to be a breakdown of those pardons. The president could not say, "Hey, go pardon people on January 6th. Don't bother telling me which or who. Just the people associated. If it's associated with January 6th, that's essentially giving agency through the auto pen, which is what the OLC has said is not allowed. You are not allowed to provide agency. OLC 2005. Yes, I'll send it to you. I can link it to you. Me and Edward Gibbs were reading that.
Okay, while you guys are looking that up,
very clear.
Let's give the mic briefly to Gibbs.
Yeah, I'll ask Nina this as well. I'll let her answer first, honestly, then Pisco, because Pisco brought up something really interesting just now, and listen, I'm not going to argue the legal theory that Temple's arguing or whatever, but he brought up the iTunes thing. And this is actually very interesting to me. I'm not even going to say he's wrong because he's actually correct on this part, but this is maybe the scariest part. I don't know if this actually applies. I don't know what all the legal precedent for this would be, but Nina and Pisco after, do you think that you really want to work on the basis of the president signing executive orders in the same manner of autotune and that being sufficiently understanding what he signed? Is that the precedent that y'all actually want going forward? Like, not just the actual legal.
I assume you mean iTunes?
iTunes, yeah, iTunes. Is that the legal precedent y'all want going forward? That he could just sign something, not understand it, but if it was in the thing like contract law, like an iTunes agreement, that y'all are okay with that? Like for every president going forward.
Well, he's just using it as an example. I don't think that was like
that specific example.
That's
right. No, I'm not saying it's 1-to-1. I'm saying let's just say it is a 1-to-1. Is that something you want as a legal precedent going forward, like for presidents?
That if someone
presidents that they just
Like signs executive orders like an iTunes contract. They don't even know what's in it, but or they're not even maybe possibly mentally able. But since they signed it, they had some idea they were signing.
Well, generally the
something
idea
was
behind
something.
that, right, is that you have a general idea of what you're signing. It's like you're supposed to kind of summarize it. Obviously, Pisco would have a better answer than I do because he's a lawyer and I'm not.
I'm not trying to be
But
silly.
like the idea is that like I don't think that's a problem. Like, do you really want like every single thing that ever happens like in front of the president's desk to be like mega litigated like every single time? That seems a little silly, right? Like how would we do anything?
No, I would want him to know a Cliff Notes at least version of every bill.
Right, exactly, and that's exactly what he's talking about when it comes to like
The
the
iTunes agreement.
Do you guys realize that we do typically have this paper trail that you're arguing we don't have? We do typically have like memos, we have memorandums, we have briefing notes, we have memos, all this
I know
stuff.
you hate that
No,
I'm
I'm not.
speaking
I'm
and
saying
'cause you like hate me or something, but like you're being silly.
No, I'm just embarrassed for you, honestly.
Okay, well, anyway, I would like to, like, so you go ahead. Yeah,
it's a bit insufferable,
So your question
I'm not
is,
the lawyer.
Your question is
speaking.
Oh, I know that.
Let Nina finish for a moment. My God, you guys are all every single one. Okay. Nina, finish.
No, I was gonna go ahead and give my time to Pisco.
No, I think it's so the question is, to what level of specificity does the president need to know what he's signing when he signs it?
Yes.
Right. So in my opinion, right, if the president has been vested with executive authority. And I do agree that the president, by necessity, constitutionally, is allowed to delegate that authority. And if the president entrusts, for example, his Secretary of State to write some kind of memorandum about a foreign policy situation, and he has entrusted that part of his power to make that discretion to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State comes up here, sign this, it's really important, I don't have time to explain it, and he signs it, I do think that that has the force of law. The president made a conscious, volitional decision to trust his Secretary of State person. He's invested that Secretary of State person with the authorities related to whatever that's going on. And so I would say that, and I expect, by the way, that what his actual practice is, Trump doesn't have a clue of half of these executive orders that he's signing. When you show him on the table just like signing random shit, he like doesn't even know what these are all about. But I would never say something like,
guy have to tell him about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say something like those.
What are you making that claim based on? That's obviously false.
Based on my,
that's obviously false. You know that presidents are briefed, right? You know that every presidents get briefings on all of these things. Like you're really suggesting that you don't think, based on what, that President Trump was unaware of what these executive orders were until he was signing them. What are you saying? Why would you make that claim when you know it's nearly impossible to prove?
Well, let him.
Yeah, I mean you can, but it's just I've already discredited you in my mind. It's just such a stupid claim.
I don't think we care what you think.
Just
let him provide the evidence.
You think it's a stupid.
I don't care what Jack Daniels thinks.
You think it's a stupid claim for someone looking at Trump, his body language, the questions that he's asking about what these executive actions do. You think that it's a stupid claim for someone to be like, he might not know what's inside those executive actions. And
yes, I think that's a dumb claim. When he's literally reading them there, so it's pretty retarded.
So you think he's read every single one of his executive actions?
No, that's not the claim here. That's not the claim here. He knows what he's signing. He knows what he's signing. Can he recite them from memory? No, he cannot recite them from memory. So we're not. It's not the debate.
So he has not drafted them. He has not drafted them. We know where these come from.
Pisco, let me ask you about your earlier hypothetical.
Because you attacked me.
Well, I was going to entertain your hypothetical. I'm not attacking you.
You attacked me, so I'm going to defend myself.
Yeah, I know you love attacking me.
Yeah,
well, you're hammered. It's easy.
First of all, you have Gibbs on your side. Gibbs sounds like a idiot every time we talk. No, sorry, ricochet shot, but it's true. All right.
Gibbs was cooking. We do need an investigation because you guys need it. We need it for you guys, realistically.
So all called each other parted. We've gotten that out of the way.
All right,
Let's move on. Okay.
So now we broke the ice. Now we can really talk.
So to be 100% clear, we know where some of the language from a lot of these executive actions are coming from. They're coming from the Heritage Foundation. They're sometimes ripped directly from Project 2025's team. They're written by Russ Vaughn and other people. No, it 100%.
Why do you discredit yourself like this? Like, you were doing well, and now you just say shit like this. It's like, how am I ever supposed to take you seriously, dude?
So these executive orders are
ripping executive orders straight out of Project 2025, copy paste.
So Russ, for example,
why do you say that?
You sound like you're
Let me give you an example.
It's just partisan.
So let me give you an example. Russell Vought, he is now the head of the Office of Management and Budget. So he is in charge of a lot of the global affairs of the administration, and he was involved intimately with Project 2025. A lot of these executive actions that relate, for example, to the spending freeze, to the freeze on foreign financial assistance, those come directly from his writings in Project 2025. So when I say what I'm saying, I know what I'm talking about, and it is the case. It is the case that we know that Trump is not drafting these documents. He might generally have an idea once he reads the title of it what it means, but he doesn't have a sophisticated knowledge of what's in these. You really gonna suggest that it's surprising that a 922-page document produced by a Republican think tank has some overlap with a Republican president? Is that really shocking? You're like, oh my god! We should have ruled out everything in that document. It's just so dumb, dude. It's so beneath it, and it's off topic when you were the one that was relevance gating earlier.
All you motherfuckers,
I can explain why it's
Pisco
relevant.
Answer the question. Once he's finished, I'll let you respond.
I can explain why it's relevant.
Then we'll go to Pentuple. Go ahead.
So I'm not commenting on the overlap other than to say that the overlap shows that it's not being crafted from the head of Zeus, from Trump himself, that we know that we actually can source where some of these executive actions come from in terms of who is drafting them, okay? So you got so
That's
triggered.
not relevant, though, because we're talking about the authority of implementing it. The president doesn't...
It is relevant. So you got so triggered when I say Project 2025 because you thought I was making a political statement on Project 2025.
No, it's funny. It's like the biggest cell phone ever.
You're one of those.
It lost you the election.
You're like a triggered SJW. You hear a word.
It lost you the popular vote.
You're a triggered SJW. You hear a word like Project 2025, and you can't control yourself. What I'm talking about isn't the nature of the Project 2025 and whether it's good or bad. I'm saying that we can actually track a lot of these executive actions and who drafted them and who wrote them, and there's reporting about who the principal authors are, all to go to the point that we know that Trump doesn't have a sophisticated knowledge of the ins and outs of these executive actions to address Gibbs' question, which was, to what degree of knowledge do we need to have of presidents for the executive actions? And I'm telling you, I have a pretty, I give a lot of discretion to presidents to trust their advisors. And if they're presented with a document to sign and they're knowing about what and signing it and they're trusting their agents to tell them the truth, that's part of being the executive. And so I'm going to assume the validity.
So you like Elon Musk?
Hang on a second. No, there's separate problems with Elon Musk that have nothing that have nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Unelected bureaucrats making decisions and recommending advice to the president.
You're trying to go on 20 different tangents. Pisco's got to finish. Land your plane, Amelia Earhart.
So the answer is this: that if the president is making a decision to trust his advisors and just signing something in front of him, yes, I am going to assume the validity of that document. And I'm yet to see any place in this. I've been scrolling through it. This OLC memo that says the president needs to have knowledge of every particular person that is affected by his pardon. I don't know where that comes from.
All right, so
Gibbs, go ahead.
So yeah, I got to respond to a couple things. One, Pentupple's absolutely right. There is overlap with Project 35, and that's because it's a 900-page document, and they put all these goals forward. Now Trump. And here's a big thing that Pisco is kind of leaving out, had a thing called Agenda 47. That was what he was going to do. That's what he said he was going to do. And if you go look on Agenda 47, all these executive actions and all the stuff that he's done, he's pushed legislatively, all these things, they all, coincidentally, line up with the things on Agenda 47. Now, let's talk about Hunter. Let's talk about Biden. And Hunter Biden. He said he wasn't going to do some things. Said he wasn't going to pardon people. He goes back on his word. Now, hold on.
I condemn that
as a corrupt. Hold on. I know. I'm not arguing you, Pisco. I, as a corrupt, self-interested man, if I was president and my son was going to get charged with a crime, you bet your sweet ass I would have pardoned him right off the jump. Not even going to argue that. However, this is my point, though, is that in conjunction with all these other things, like that we have evidence of him not being cognitive there, then suddenly he goes back on his word and then preemptively pardons a whole swath of people. Seems very unlike hard on crime Biden, the author of the crime bill.
I said that was impeachable. But by the way, did you know that I said that was impeachable when he did that?
Pisco, I'm not. You're fighting a ghost. I'm not saying you said this. Okay. I'm just saying whenever we sit here and do these things, hey, I want an investigation. See if this guy even knew what going on, and we have enough evidence that I think an investigation is warranted. And whenever we go, hey, this is the standard of evidence, we want to see some memos, some reports, some whatever, y'all are going, oh lordy, that's crazy. Like I don't understand why that's so scary to you. Like if Trump was doing this, y'all would also want evidence. I said I was okay with the standard Nina put forth with, hey, let's cognitively test them. Why are y'all like? Why is this suddenly this run away from these things? And then you want to argue about Elon Musk. This is why it's not a miscellaneous, unrelated thing. Oh, Wick, to your point, is that we are arguing, hey, we don't like unelected bureaucrats potentially running the office as the president because he doesn't know what's going on, and they're just signing orders with auto pen, and then Biden's like, sure, I signed it, doesn't know. That's a problem. We want an investigation into that, and then y'all are going to sit here and have the audacity saying that's fine, but hey, we have issues with Elon Musk, who's an advisor.
The debate is not about the debate is not about
it's called hypocrisy.
No, the debate is not about our favored array of government actors and whether or not, to what extent.
So you don't want the same standard.
But we're not here to discuss.
No, the reason why we was bringing up the same standard is just because of the fallacy of your argument.
No, because I'm doing the same standard for both. I agree to your standard. Why wouldn't you want to agree to that?
Okay, but your friend doesn't. So that's
simple. Do you not agree with the statement I put forward? Did you want Trump mentally cognitive test to prove that he was fine, or all presidents in general?
Person, camera, woman.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, cool. Fat. Every president going forward, let's cognitively test him. He's cool with that. Like, okay, what's your problem with that? Well, okay, if we want to prove it in Martin, we have the spoken records or the memo put forward. Do you have a problem with that being the policy going forward with every president?
So you think that we should look into all of his pardons?
If he's either
listen, if you want to suggest that he had no idea, didn't sign.
If he goes, hey, I'm going to sign pardons for everybody involved in this, and then he signs the first one, and then 200 are signed by AutoPen, I think that's sufficient enough evidence he intended to sign all those pardons, as opposed to Biden going, I would never do this.
Okay,
then suddenly there's a bunch of preemptive pardons.
Does Trump need to know the names of every single Jan 6er that he
should
pardoned?
Advocate for him.
I would argue he probably does need to hear them or be briefed on them at some point.
Yes,
I would argue. He needs to be briefed on it. Yes, he needs to be briefed on the pardons.
Okay, so
read the OLC opinion. Look, I know I'm not.
You just admitted that you know that he doesn't know their names.
I don't even understand what you're saying. But to answer Pisco,
he doesn't know their names.
He doesn't know their. Come on, you think he knows all 1,500 people's names or heard them? That's a ridiculous.
No, I'm saying he needs. Okay, I know you haven't read the OLC opinion I sent you, but when you read it, Pisco, you will understand that there is a level of specificity required. Nina, nobody understands what you're rambling. I'm asking Pisco. The OLC opinion, which he will read later, the OLC opinion suggests and shows that there is a level of specificity needed. So it's not a broad, like, just generic thing. I don't care about your question.
I know you don't care about my question, but you're gonna have to answer. You're gonna debate with me, motherfucker.
All right, go ahead. All right, let's hear it. Let's hear this great question.
Do you think that it is important for Trump to know the names of the people he pardoned?
I think it's important for him to be briefed on it. Yes.
That's crazy, bro. Because he doesn't know them.
Yeah. He doesn't memorize them. No, he doesn't memorize them. No. There's a difference between memorizing them and when you're in the.
I didn't say memorize. I didn't say
when you're being briefed. Yes, I argue yes. When he's being briefed on these pardons and when they're going through the process of doing this pardon process by the executive.
He doesn't know the names of any of them. You started off.
What do you mean by no? Do you mean by memorize? Is that what you mean, or do you mean that he heard them when they went through the process?
I'm arguing. No, I'm confused. Pep-tuple. Is it your claim that Trump was told the names of all 1,500 individuals on January 6th?
I would expect that as a part of the pardon process that he was engaged in, that yes, he probably those names, all of them, yes.
To know what they did.
Why is that wild? Why is that wild?
Do you not think it's important?
It didn't happen.
To at least have a consideration for
based on what? How do you have evidence that didn't happen?
Because
based on what?
Because I know Trump's character, and because there's no reporting that he sit down and listen.
What do you know Trump's character based on?
Wait a second. So we should have an investigation, shouldn't we, to find out whether or not he actually heard audibly the names of all those people, right?
No. Here, let me try.
Right, that's the standard you're wanting.
We could have a question about whether he. Okay, the point is this: when the president.
Isn't the burden of proof on you? Isn't the burden of proof on you to show that he did hear them?
Yes.
Wait, isn't the burden of proof to show that he
for this hypothetical that you've asked me? Sure, but what you're ignoring is a legitimate legal opinion from 2005 that I'll reference over and over and over again that states there is a level of specificity required by the president before he signs things.
So I agree.
Before his signature can be affixed.
I've seen some of the litigation.
There are specific. Yes, it cannot be as vague as you're describing. It cannot be pardon everyone related with Jan 6. No. Trump more than likely heard every single name as a part of this pardoning process when they engaged in it. They probably took over the course of weeks. What do you mean? Why do you say that? How do you possibly make that claim?
Well, because
you cannot challenge us to not have claim of Biden's instability and the fact that he didn't know, and then suggest something like this. It is so discrediting. It is so discrediting.
Hold on. You know how this probably happened? He was told, Trump probably said, I want to pardon all the January 6ers, write up a name of all the January 6ers, give them pardons, and I'll sign them. That's probably what happened. And they said, yes, sir, and he did that. And he had no idea who he was. Because
why do you say that, Wick?
Well, hold on.
Why do you guys discredit yourself like this? Why do you make this claim based on absolutely nothing? Why? It's just so dumb. It's literally, I say this all the time, leftists pretend they're in the building. Like, you cannot make that claim and expect to be taken seriously, right?
Let me ask
you literally said your evidence was I know Trump's character. That is like the most low IQ argument you could possibly respond with.
Okay, you can say
I can be better than you. So,
Wick, can I ask you? So here's my question, Wick.
Briefly.
So let's just engage in your hypothetical, right?
I shouldn't have jumped in, but...
No, you're fine. I actually, this is actually something I wanted to get to, so I'm happy you did this, right? So, all right, let's just say that's the metric. Say that Trump, like you've already you stated this yourself specifically, Wick, that you were okay with the people around Biden. That's like, okay, because he delegated them. He thought you liked the people around him, et cetera, et cetera. All right, let's just use.
You know what Biden never did? He never added someone to a reporter to a group chat where they
That's
leaked
fine.
war
That's fine.
crimes. That's
Nice meme.
Sure. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Now, okay, whether or not that's
yes,
bad.
I am
sure.
okay. I am more okay with Biden's team than I am with Trump's
Sure,
team.
that's fine.
True.
But the argument could be made, right, that these are his people around him, correct? These are his people advising him. Yes, we
Trump's
so
people.
far?
He had advisors.
Okay. So Trump's people around. So now here's my argument.
You trust him to not steal women's luggage?
Hold on. So this is my question. So let's just compare these one to one.
You know.
Trump goes, I want to pardon all the Jan Sixers, right? Now, whether he meets the standard where he has a brief where he's got all the names, whether I don't give a shit. But his goal is, I want to pardon all the January Sixers. And he tells his aide to go do this. His aide comes back and brings him a list, and he signs with the first one or whatever.
Yeah, we think
and
it's
then the rest
valid.
are all done
We're being consistent.
I know, Pisco. I know. Hold on. I'm asking you. So like this. So Wick, that's fine by that standard.
Yeah.
But now, here's the thing. Now, say Trump had come out previously, said, I will never pardon these people. And then somehow, suddenly, while there's questions about his decline, he pardons people after saying he would. Would you argue that, hey, maybe we should look into this and see, when there's already questions surrounding their mental capabilities, whether or not these are done on behalf of the president or it was a shadow staff around him doing things?
Okay, that's not sufficient evidence to show.
That's not
but it's enough to investigate.
I want to take that though. I think that's a beautiful thing you just said, because I want to apply the standards that you're applying to Biden onto you guys, and for both of what you just said. So one is, I think that if you're applying the standard that we need to prove the pardons are valid beyond the prima facie fact of the pardon document itself and the public declaration of it, if we need to prove that it's valid for Biden vis-a-vis his mental cognition and his awareness of the document, surely you have the burden of proof to show that he heard all the 1,500 names, blue guy, right?
What is it? Okay.
What if it's in a brief? Like, what if it's just in the document?
Wait. I just want. He said a standard.
Why is it like mind blowing that they could go through 1,500 names?
I'm asking who the
like,
burden.
Why is that mind blowing?
Whether it's mind blowing or not, I'm asking. Isn't the burden of proof on you to show it?
Well, we could just show the audio tapes
he
from
heard
the presidential office or the memo. We'd be okay with that.
Wait, to show that he heard all the wait. He said that it was required that Trump at least hear one time the different names of the Jan 6 partners. My question isn't it on you, the burden of proof on you, to show that he actually did hear all those names, and that if you were in court and one of these Jan 6ers,
the same argument that we're making about Biden, bro. Holy shit!
Wait a second. That's my point. Wait, let him answer the question, Gibbs. So the question is as follows, and I'll repeat it one more time because you keep interrupting. If it's the case that it's a requirement that Donald Trump have heard audibly at least once every single name of the various people who are being pardoned,
that's not what the opinion says. That's an
example.
That's an example of specificity. Yes, I was responding to you about what level of specificity is required. The OLC opinion would suggest. Pisco, the OLC opinion would suggest that yes, he needs to be aware to that degree.
Okay,
hearing 1,500 names in a briefing is not mind-blowing shit.
No, but
it's not that crazy.
Okay,
you just agreed with us because we're saying we would want that standard.
We're so
you're
close.
not even willing to have that standard.
So you just said in your opinion it's required that he have heard all these 1,500 names, and just like it's required.
No.
What? You just said that.
I'm not saying the specific. The OLC opinion requires that he hears the names of everyone when they're pardoned. That is not what it says. What it says is there is a level of specificity required, and it's in the opinion.
You just said that you think that someone would need to have heard the names at the very least.
You asked me if I think that Trump would have had to heard the names to meet the level of specificity required by the OLC, and I think yes, probably,
okay, so
I do think so.
According to your
based on my interpretation, you might disagree when you read the opinion, but you haven't.
So according to your standard, isn't the burden of proof on you to show that he actually heard them?
The burden of proof depends how it's being challenged, Pisco, which is why my earlier argument about how this is challenged is very relevant.
Let me give you an example.
Schiff will come into a prosecution and claim a valid pardon.
So let me give you an example.
What you're claiming where like we are challenging pardons in blanket.
So let's actually get the example. So imagine that someone after Trump administration, new administration comes and they try to charge one of these Jan 6ers and they say that pardon wasn't valid because Trump didn't hear the name. Whose burden of proof would it be to show that Trump didn't hear the name?
Assuming it was AutoPen and it was the similar thing.
Now the AutoPen
they would have a burden of proof. Yeah, it does matter. Yeah, because when you have the wedding signature, that is self-authenticating. But the difference here is you don't have.
So is a public document.
No. But here with Trump, you have a plethora of evidence. I would be very, very happy to be the lawyer on that team because I could very, very quickly provide you plenty of evidence that shows that Trump intended and wanted to do this. The fact that you don't have any Biden is damaging to your case.
That he heard the name.
Why are you harping on this?
Because
this is my opinion. In your response to your question, that's not a standard that's been established.
I'm going to help.
That's my understanding of the standard. Yes, that's my understanding.
Because you guys are missing each other.
How did you graduate, boss?
I'm going to be the translator here. I'm going to be the translator, and I'll let you decide which one's here. Okay, I'm not going to make any statements on that. I'm staying neutral in this. But here is the question that is being asked, right? The statement in the document you provided, right, or the source, the case that you provided says there has to be a level of specificity. When it was interrogated, what level of what is the standard and what meets that standard? You mentioned and you said several times, Pentuple, that your standard is that they have to have heard the names, right?
My reading, okay, let me clear this up.
I know, you've said it, we know.
My reading of the...
We get it.
Well, you're explaining it slightly incorrect, but okay, go ahead.
What was incorrect about what I said?
Because I'm saying the standard as my interpretation. You're asking me on the cuff. Do I think that the standard requires it? Yes. That's not a standard.
That's your
standard written in the OLC. That's just what that's just my
do you think your standard's a good one or a bad standard?
This could be I think it's probably good. I think it would probably be fair to say, but also you could probably convince me otherwise.
Why can't we test your standard?
You could probably convince me otherwise. Go ahead and test it.
Wait, let me try to convince you otherwise. That's the stupid standard. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
What about in a brief? Like, what if you have all 1,500 names in the document itself? Like, would that meet the specificity standard?
The president has to consent to this. There's a level of specificity required. I think when you're talking about pardons, you can't have a pardon where he has enough information if he doesn't even know who it's going to.
What about a list of the names?
Yes, I do think he has to. He doesn't have to memorize them.
We can move on. He
just needs to be aware of it. Yes.
What about hold on? But what about the brief thing? Can I get that clarified too? Would a list of names? No. So like, say we're doing the document, and they go, "Hey, these are a list of 1,500 names that are in the January 6ers." Is that sufficient enough? Like
he just said no.
Or is he only, or is it only? Just to be clear, if he hears them.
He just said no. You'd have to hear them.
That's a question for Pentuple.
That's what I'm asking.
Are you not listening to your partner?
I understand that. Thank you. I'm trying to just get his clarity because I think there's a difference in what he's saying. I want to know if it's both or one. So that's what I'm asking.
I know it sounds stupid.
Is it only if they only hear it, or would it be in a list count, like where he could read them and he signs it?
The president has to be aware. If it's in a list, I guess you could make the argument that he knows what pardon he's giving out.
If the names of the pardon of the Biden administration were listed on that document, if the names that he pardoned were listed on the document that was
if they were all listed,
you would say that is sufficient evidence for you.
But they were listed.
Yeah.
No.
They were listed.
On what? On what? What were they listed on? Okay, yeah, but those were the AutoPen pardons. That's
not other than the pardon. We said in a brief. Or other things in a memo, we specify that several times.
So if he mentioned it.
Hang on. Wait, Pisco, you admitted and acknowledged. Hang on. You guys acknowledged that the pardons don't even require a writing, right? Because what matters is the consent and intent of the president. That's the point, right?
That's the point.
So when you only have the writing, then no, you don't have this assumed valid pardon when you only have the writing. Because as you said, the writing's not even relevant. What the evidence required for the pardon is not the writing.
This is the argument I want to make on top of that. Hold on.
It's the consent of the president. You guys are letting the president get away with it.
Hold on. I want to make something clear here. There's the intent and clarity in the cognitive ability, right? So this is what I'm saying, right? When we look at this, Trump can prove that his intent was to pardon these people. If they need to go get the audio tape and a transcript of him saying, get this done, I have no doubt that we can provide that evidence. Somebody can. Right? I don't know who that is. Whether it's a tweet, whether it's him on a speech somewhere, whether he's got memos he's sent out written, I know that can be provided. What we do have on record for Biden is that he was in clear cognitive decline from day one. We have him on record saying he would do the opposite thing of what was done, and I even granted a caveat for his son, but that doesn't even give a caveat when all of his actions previously throughout his life, tough on crime Biden, to indicate he would not have done the preemptives. So we have the preemptives. So I have a traditional actions that go against his normal will. I have
so you're not challenging Hunter Biden? Are you challenging Hunter Biden's pardon?
No, I'm not, because I would do that if I was my son.
Wait, the only reason you're not challenging Hunter Biden's pardon is because you would do that?
No, there was a wedding signature.
And I think
it was a wedding signature.
So what I'm saying is, on top of, well, that's also a good point. But here's my point on top of that, is when we have these other pardons, they're not like that. We have executive orders where it's questionable about who signed it because he's not even there. We don't have a paper trail. And when I hold y'all to the standard, y'all go, oh, well, would Trump need to meet this standard? And we go, yes, because we think he could provide the audio tapes of him doing it, or the audio tapes of somebody reading them to him. The transcripts
of the pardon?
Of the memo.
Anything. It could be anything.
The transcripts of the memos. Like, we can prove the intent. But what y'all can't give me is any proof of intent that Biden wants to do any of these things. And what we have is more questions. Whether he even knew what was going on at all.
The burden is on you. The burden is on you. You're making a claim.
Yeah, the burden is on you.
The burden's going to be on Adam Schiff. Is who the burden's going to be on? Is Adam Schiff when he gets prosecuted. So you guys can keep dismissing the burden of proof, but you're no help to your client.
Schiff's not my client, bro. Shut the fuck up. So
no, he's going to be somebody's client making this argument, Pisco, isn't he?
Yeah, we'll get closer to the mic too.
In this debate, you guys. First of all, I don't want to go this route because Gibbs is also slurring. But you know what? I understand Gibbs.
I always slur.
You are slurring right now. I slur sometimes, and so
I disagree.
I think
I have Invisalign. It's hard for me to talk. Okay, are you really making fun of me for that?
I think it's kind of cheap when you do that. I don't like it. Let's just stick to the issues. I don't know why you can't just stick to the issues. So just to be clear, right? Like
I'll agree with that.
Gibbs, I think that what?
You just scoffed at us when we suggested that the pardons themselves wouldn't be we were talking about the list of names in front of Biden. Yeah. And then you were suggesting that the pardon themselves is proof of the list. Well, that's after the fact.
I didn't say that. No,
Can you explain why you guys were laughing at that?
No. What we laughed at was the notion that, so you had said something, I think you were approaching a situation whereas if you could show that Trump had read the names, it wouldn't need to necessarily be vocalized. Like if you could show he actually read the names and they were on.
It's not about reading the names, though.
What is it about?
But that's what I'm saying. We don't have to prove. The court's never going to be saying to prove Trump read the names. They're going to say prove Trump had the consent and knowledge of this pardon. And prove that he authorized this pardon.
It wouldn't require.
And that doesn't, like we said, and like we both conceded together earlier, the evidence for a pardon is not a written document. What it is the consent and knowledge of the president. That can be reflected on paper, but if it's an auto pen, it's not inherently reflected if you don't have anything else.
This is how I would phrase it. This is how I would phrase it. What you just said, which is the pardon, the written document that's publicly produced, right? That evinces, that is evidence of the state of mind and also the verbal.
No, that's after the fact. That is the act. We're talking about proof of. When we're talking about Trump's proof, right? We're talking about him and the 1,500 names for the pardons. That wouldn't be valid. What we're not talking about is in the actual pardons. We're talking about that list being shown to him so that he understands what he's doing prior to. If somebody just took pardons to Joe Biden and said, hey, we just pardoned these people and used your signature, is that cool? Do you think that's all right? Is that acceptable? You can't even give retroactive consent. This has to be in order.
No, I agree. I think there needs to be an order. You can't pardon someone and then seek retroactive approval
right, so
from the president.
We need that before the act.
I think you probably could get retroactive approval while he's still president if you approve something you've already done.
Not according to OLC? Nope.
Hang on a second. So, first of all, the OLC memo, by the way.
Like I said, you should read the opinion. It'll help guide you with
the OLC memo is not binding law, just to be clear. And so far, I have seen no evidence of the OLC
memo.
No,
it's not binding law, but it's probably a better take than Twitch.
Yes, I just want to be clear. OLC is not binding. There are OLC memos in the past that I've disagreed with, and so far I've been unable to find representations of law that you've made about the OLC memo.
These are the memorandum opinions provided to the President's Council, so this is what the Presidents have been expected to operate on.
The reporting that I've seen about this OLC memo, and I have, I agree. I have not read the 2005 OLC memo. What I've seen in reporting is that it purports to say that a wet signature is not required. Any further kind of statements of law, I don't know about.
It's a lot of stuff not relevant.
But let's. I just want to be clear about what we're talking about now, which is you're saying that it would be improper for someone to bring a list of pardons to the president and say, hey, these are, I'm the head of the pardon office. These are 100 good names, sir. Why don't you sign off on these pardons, on these 100 names? I'll put it in front of you. And the president's like, I don't really have time to look at all these individual cases or even really to read the names, but I trust you, pardon official, and I believe that you want what's best for the American people, and I believe these 100 names deserve pardon because I entrusted that power and investigation into you. And so I'm going to sign these trusting you. And
you can argue, you can argue that was enough.
You realize what he's arguing for, right? So you're okay with an advisor
valid, right?
recommending.
Good point, Gibbs.
Yeah. So you're arguing that you're okay with an advisor, an unelected bureaucrat,
advisory roles to the president,
advising the president,
and you're even cool with the president
and giving him recommendations and fully entrusting him and just signing them.
There is no contradiction. There is no contradiction whatsoever.
There is a bit of a contradiction.
There is a little bit of a
contradiction.
There is no contradiction whatsoever. There's no contradiction.
Assuming that you take issue with Doge and Elon Musk, there is a contradiction.
Yeah.
Then there is definitely a contradiction.
There definitely is a contradiction.
So there is no contradiction. The notion that it's legal for the president to have advisors doesn't mean that everything that advisors do is legal. You understand that, yes or no, right?
Okay.
Do you understand that? So I can still have a problem with the legality of what Doge is doing, notwithstanding the fact that I think...
What does Doge do?
Yeah,
what does Doge do?
Hold on, that doesn't change.
Does Doge, hang on. I want to ask Pisco. I want to see if he knows it. Does Doge fire people? Or do they recommend to the departments to take action?
So it's
not irrelevant.
It's actually in dispute right now. I'm following
not irrelevant.
Wait, it's actually in dispute right now, and I'm following a lot of the litigation about what Doge is doing, what they're not doing, what they're purporting to do. So right now, what Doge is presently doing is actively in dispute. It's not the topic of the debate, but to show you that I actually know what Doge is doing and what they were purported to have done, I will now give this to you, even though it's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about. Doge is accessing information from departments. Doge is giving to what they purport to be to other agencies commands for staffing decisions.
So
but it's on the president's order, correct?
They're advising those departments in the same way that you just suggested in your hypothetical. The president would be advised.
So it's actually alleged that they're doing more than that, right? It's alleged that they're doing more than that. And there have been injunctions now and court orders related to other activities that purport to have the force of law from Doge.
But what does it matter?
And Doge is working.
If the president signed it, like you said.
And just to be clear, even assuming that what Doge,
this is why it's inconsistent.
Even there's no inconsistency whatsoever, right? So
it's so inconsistent.
There is no. What's the inconsistency?
The inconsistency, as Gibbs pointed out, is that you're literally like, oh, the president could just get advice from this council. You don't even have to actually read it. He signs it, and then it's good because it was signed, so it's good. And then you're like, actually, I have issues with these advisory councils because I don't like them.
What's really
there is an inconsistency
there. Are different actions here.
Hold on. What's really crazy to extend on that, though, just real quick, is that Trump ran on the campaign, and part of those campaign promises to his constituents was establishing something like Doge, right?
Irrelevant.
So now he goes.
Well, it's not irrelevant. He also promised to make the pardons.
You're talking about my contradiction. How is it relevant? Wait, you're talking about my contradiction. How is it relevant?
I will explain this. These are campaign policies that he made. They're campaign promises. He comes in and he acts them as policy. So we have one step. We said before the campaign, I want to do this. We have step two. He gets in office. He goes, I need this executed. He appoints people advisors, and they come in like Doge. They're like, or in the special advisory capabilities, and they come in. They go, hey, I'm going to advise you. Somebody comes in and gives them a list of all the January 6ers because he's already had evidence that he said this. We have this paper trail. We have a visual trail. Yada yada. Now with Biden. On the other side, we have evidence that he has said the opposite. It's not a ramble. I know you don't like the truth. On the other side, we have the evidence that
even
Biden
your partner
said
knows he's cringing.
He wouldn't do one thing, and then he did that thing. We also have evidence from his own staffers.
You haven't even found out what you're talking about. You're just this is verbal diarrhea. So they're accusing me. They've just accused me of inconsistency, right? And they said something.
I'm the only one being consistent.
They've said something to the effect of. They've said something to the effect of, well, you're inconsistent because you think that advisors can just say whatever they want to the president, and the president, if they go on the basis of that advisors, that it's legally authorized for the president to do what they're doing. So it could be the case that the president can absolutely listen to their advisors pursuant to the president's duties and then, follow their suggestions, and the president could act. But that doesn't mean that everything that the advisors do independent of the president, or things, for example, the president doesn't have authorization to do, that I couldn't still take issue with the conduct of those advisors. Or, by the way, if the advisors, killed someone, that, you thought advisors could do the president, no, just because I don't have a problem in principle with the advisors giving advice to the president acting on those orders, doesn't mean that everything those advisors do independently of the president, or let me finish, independently of the president, or pursuant to authorities the president doesn't actually have, or things that are, in and of themselves bad acts that I don't have to agree with on moral reasons, I can't still be critical of those agencies. There's absolutely zero contradiction, and you guys are idiots for trying to push down this line, which is ultimately irrelevant.
Answers this. This is what we call. Hold on. This is what we call mental gymnastics to justify hypocrisy. That's
what's the hypocrisy? No, stop. What is the issue with what I just said?
I think bullshit.
To be honest, bullshit. I think the reason, I'll admit, it's not the most relevant Pisco, and it's really not a huge harping point. I just think the reason we challenge it on inconsistency
everything you disagree with is irrelevant. I know.
I agree it's irrelevant, right, but what did I say? What did I say that was
the relevance?
Was
the relevance was that you were suggesting you would be okay with advisors that the president's trusting and not even really listening to. I don't even know if I would go that far. I do think that the president should. I don't think the president should be able to get away with I just signed it, because I know that signing, when you sign something, if you signed it, you signed it. You know what I mean? I get that. But I don't really want to set that bar for the president. You know what I mean? I do want to hold the president to account and say, don't just trust your advisors.
I think that he should. When you say should, meaning it would be my preference that he actually know what he's doing, that he's sufficiently read in on what his advisors are doing. But all I'm talking about is the authorization the president has. If the president is being irresponsible and just not reading into a lot of what his advisors are doing and just willy-nilly signing stuff, I think that person maybe should be impeached. Maybe that person shouldn't be president anymore. But I think that's legal what he's doing. That is completely separate from,
I wouldn't challenge that either.
That is completely separate from my criticisms of Doge, to the extent that they're doing things that they're not authorized to do, to the extent that they're doing something that the president is not authorized to do, or to the extent that they're doing something that are independent wrongs or immoral, even if what they're doing is legal. And so, for example, lying. So I think Doge is well within her rights to release public statements, but they've been lying a lot. So there's nothing inconsistent about my criticisms of Doge and the notion that I believe in a robust system that allows for presidents to pretty much listen to their advisors, and if they just go by what the advisors say, then it will have the force of law.
We've added enough nuance.
Okay. We got it. We got a couple things I need to address, right? And we got to keep things a little bit in order. I do have a couple super chats I want to read, right? And make a little money on this, right? But just for point of clarity, did you send me the right document, Admiral Gibbs? Because the document you sent me was about Biden changing his mind on the Hunter Biden.
And then when this article was written, it was before the other ones, if I believe I'm correct.
So what
my point, hold on, Wick. I'll clarify.
Stop. Because what I asked you, and you said you had evidence for, was where Biden said he would never pardon Fauci, etc. And I'm looking for that evidence. So send me that evidence.
My claim, to clarify, was I personally would, and this is my claim, this is the claim I made, was one, we already have evidence that he's gone against his word with his son. Now, I am not taking that as sole alone evidence that this is of evidence of greater thing, because I personally would pardon my son. My argument was that we know now that he has gone against things that he said previously in regards to pardons, specifically his son being one of them. It's not hard to go figure, based off his previous actions, as hard on crime Biden, author of the crime bill. We know he doesn't like crime, that suddenly for him, it would be out of character to preemptively pardon a bunch of people. Okay, cool. So Biden, that's one possibility. But we also have the possibility, and I think bears worth investigation, because we know his cognitive decline, that, hey, maybe we should see if he knew at all what was going on.
Maybe, or are you sure? Maybe, or are you sure?
Okay.
Maybe, or are you sure?
My standard is, I think it's high enough a standard that we should investigate, and then if there are issues,
so is your position
then we
different?
Press charges. My position has been, since the beginning of this debate, that there's enough evidence that something fishy's going on. Let's look into it, and if there is evidence, there's no examples of paper trails, no examples.
So you don't think it's been proven that the pardons are invalid? You just said that there's something fishy going on.
I said I think the whole Biden administration
so
could be invalid. Could be invalid. No, I don't concede nothing. Here's what I'm conceding is that we need to investigate, because a lot of fishy shit's going on.
Okay. I got to read a couple super chats. We only got a couple. Again, get more super chats. But no, thank you for the super chats. You give me $5 from Jeff Lewis to say Biden said he'd preemptively pardon in December and did it in January. There's a December political article that proves he knew what he was doing. Thank you for the.
I mean, that's a great super chat because it shows why isn't that evidence demonstrative for you guys? Why isn't that evidence something you consider?
No, that would be. We'd have to look at it. We could look at it. I'd be curious what the evidence is.
I would not say that's enough evidence at that point.
It would not be
just
enough?
saying Biden said, "Oh, I'll make some pardons later." That's certainly not specific enough on its own.
So why would a memo?
Like I said,
he's like high. Plus, what if we have evidence?
Yes.
So why would a memo change your mind?
In a public statement.
Why would
because
a
memo would have. A memo would be more detailed about the specifics he needs to know before he can make that decision.
Something in the National Archives.
Well, I would hold on.
You're suggesting that the president makes a public statement, they go forge his signature with the auto pen, and they can use that evidence now? That's not how it works.
I'm arguing that. Hold on. This is what's crazy is that y'all are so concerned about fascism all the time. I hear it from the left all the time. But when we bring up the idea that a puppet group of people could have been running this by hopping Biden up on amphetamines to give speeches and then not be coherent, I think we should have some coherence and questions. I know. Let's go look into it. And you're going, no, hand wave away.
Look into it.
Oh, you love fascism. Stop fucking lying.
$20 from Alexander Wren. Regarding pardons, if someone were to have included the wrong name on accident, and the document was signed by the president's hand and processed by the Office of Pardon Attorney, do you think that can be revoked months later?
Who's the question to everyone?
It could be. Yeah, maybe.
I think that if you have sufficient knowledge that the president is aware that this pardon is a document that contains a list of names and that he signs the pardon and I think it's possible to accidentally pardon someone. Yes, I think that is a concept that is possible. Yeah. Because I don't think.
No, you can't. That's legally wrong. That is insane to say.
What are you talking about?
That is insane to say. When the one thing we both conceded for evidence of a pardon is the president's knowledge and consent, and even specific consent, and then you say you can accidentally pardon someone. Yes. That is insane.
Yeah, no.
That is legally insane.
Like
it's beyond mind-blowing. How did you say that just now?
No, it's
you can accidentally pardon someone when the evidence required is knowledge and consent.
I stand by. So knowledge and consent of what? Knowledge and consent of every
of the actual facts.
Wait, no.
You can't knowledge
of the actual facts. Wait, no. Let's interrogate a little bit because now you seem a little more shaky. So the actual facts.
You're literally suggesting that if somebody held up a paper underneath something else and said, "Sign this. It's about this thing," and then the president signs it, and they fooled him. They got him. They got away with it.
Whoa! That was so out of bounds. That is not the comparison. The question: someone purports and says, "This is a list of pardons. This is a list of people that are in these pardons, and these people, these are all people who were unjustifiably imprisoned and that were shown to be exonerated, and by accident, right? There's a scrivener's error, and the person from the pardon office included someone on that list and just didn't do their due diligence, and it was a similar name, right? But the president knows that's a pardon. The president knows there's a list of names there. The president even sees all the names on there, and the president says, well, I'm going to trust your judgment, and all these names I'm going to pardon. Boop, 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 boop. It's a specific pardon. It applies to people, but it was done with bad advice. And you're saying that doesn't have the force of law because he needs to know the circumstances of each individual?
And in that case, you would argue that he had knowing and consent of that pardon. Well, even though it was errant, he had knowledge and consent of the pardon, making it valid.
Right. So
yeah.
That's accidental.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's accidental. I mean, there'd be real serious questions if that happened. I think that at this level of government, we do expect a little bit more than.
Would you agree to that?
Would you wait? Here's the question. But let's be real here. There is checks and balances for that type of stuff. That's the point. It doesn't mean they had no fucking point.
It's too late at that point. It's too late at that point. But here's the question: do you agree that valid pardon? Do you agree that valid pardon would be accidental?
In that hypothetical, I mean, it depends, but yeah, it could be. It could be.
Okay, so then when you just ridiculed me, when you were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you thought there's an accidental
pardon,"
because
you're suggesting that wouldn't.
So you also agree with that, right?
No. I ridiculed you for suggesting that the president could accidentally pardon someone without knowledge and consent.
You just agree with that.
You have to know and consent to it. You changed you shifted the goals to he accidentally pardoned someone. Yeah, I guess
based on wrong info,
mistakenly in consent. But like then, yeah, there would be perhaps questions. You could challenge that sort of pardon.
you think
like, this person got a pardon. It was a misspelling. It was supposed to go to this person, and now it's applied to this person. That doesn't work like that.
What if someone was like, "Oh, it's not Eric"?
I don't even know how this fact pattern works.
It's not Eric.
I would assume that would not be a valid pardon. I think we can all agree that if you put absolutely. Like if you
it could be invalidated, but it wouldn't be invalidated under the theory of knowledge and consent that we're arguing right now. It would be argued under some other like fraud or mistake or like some sort of other theory. The question that we have here with the auto pens is that the pardons require intent, knowledge, and consent of the president. The auto pen
and the ability
papers cannot be inherently proof of that.
To do the pardoning act, not to know the metes and bounds of every specific pardon. The intent and conscious.
What's the opinion? I'll just say it again. Read it, and then maybe we can do this debate again when you've actually educated yourself on the law enough to have the debate.
Just to be clear, you based on that opinion, your conclusion was that the president needs to have heard the name of every single
opinion directly says that the president has to be aware, have knowledge and consent of every single instance use of the signature. Not even just pardons. Every single time his signature is used, he needs to be aware.
Very different of the signature.
Not different.
Wait. Of the signature or of the specific person being pardoned? Which?
What does that matter?
It matters a great deal.
Why is that your question?
Wait, no, it matters a great deal.
No, it doesn't.
Because
what the opinion is about the president cannot delegate agency through the auto pen.
With respect,
he has to sign it off. What does the president's signature mean if not the president's intent and consent?
So with respect to the signature, not with respect to every name in the pardon, fair?
That's a different. We're doing multiple analysis here. I'm sure you can follow, but yeah. Yeah, you have to have a knowledge and consent to give out a pardon. That requires some level of information. That is too vague to say everyone associated with January 6th would be too vague based on the legal opinions.
I mean more specific than that. Is the level of knowledge required the specific names of everyone being pardoned?
Well, the opinion is about presidential signatures, which can be used for executive orders, can be used for pardons. This level of proof is like.
So what if the president did the following?
This is a guardrail.
So what if the president did the following? Everyone who's involved in the insurrectionist activities of the Civil War, you are all pardoned.
That wouldn't alone be enough to pardon them. No, they'd have to have a more specific.
Really?
Yeah, when the pardons actually took place, they would have had to have. Yeah, like what? So they definitely did.
When there was mass clemency,
hold on.
You're saying that the pardons were in effect just by declaring pardons from Civil War?
Blanket amnesty is an established legal principle dating back like thousands of years in legal principle for militaries and armies.
Or for example, when Ronald Reagan made a blanket pardon for all illegal immigrants who were in the country in 1980.
So here's the question. Here's the question. Here is the question. So if imagine that a president after the Civil War in the 1800s were to say something like this: "We are giving unconditional pardons to everyone above the." Everyone below the rank of colonel or civilians who were involved in any kind of activities related to the Confederacy and the insurrection against the United States. You'd say that a pardon of Confederacy, that would be invalid.
When I say that,
I've been saying
I would
the whole
say
time
based
that
on
pardons
military legal theory that's existed for thousands of years, and that we follow as a country. That's international law, it's historical law. I would say that it's a pretty established principle that would be something standard and expectancy of a gracious army winning, and
pardons.
Our country.
Pardons require intent and consent of the president. That cannot be delegated. So what you're asking me is like, where do we specifically define this line of specificity required? I think a safe way to maybe understand this would be that the president has to have enough information that he couldn't learn new information after that would change his mind. So maybe you can argue that there's enough information if he says, oh, all the January 6 people are pardoned. I disagree. I think that there probably is a little bit more specificity to suggest knowledge and consent of the president on each of these cases, because each pardon is an individual case. But then again,
when President Johnson actually issued a sweeping pardon for Confederacy that numbered in the thousands, do you think because he didn't hear all the names of the Confederate soldiers?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You have to have consent and knowledge, and you have to have a minimum burden of knowledge.
So when President Johnson,
based off the same legal theories,
President Andrew Johnson,
how are you failing to understand the basic legal principle that the president has to have knowledge and consent?
When President Andrew,
the burden of proof of that,
when President Andrew Johnson pardoned, sweeping granting pardons for thousands and thousands of Confederate soldiers and officials, you think that he had to have been read the names of all those thousands of Confederate soldiers? Otherwise, that would be an invalid pardon.
It depends how you argue in line with the OLC opinion I'm talking about, how much information. I'm saying it can't be too vague. We know that it can't be too vague. I don't know if it has to be like it certainly doesn't have to be that he memorizes all of the names, correct?
Are you walking back the names?
I'm not walking back. I'm trying to explain to you that the issue here is the intent and consent of the president. That does not delegate it. So if you're delegating this to someone where there's not enough information for you to have knowledge and consent, then you can't do it, because you have to have knowledge and consent of the president. How that is measured is case by case. The answer is it depends. I'm sure you've heard that many times. That's why all these hypotheticals are changing every time you give nuance. The point is that the president has to give consent. The president's consent has to be knowledgeable, and it cannot be delegated to someone else who is an advisor.
He has to be able to make
it. Does he need to know the names or not?
I'm telling you, there is a level of specificity required. Perhaps that level of specificity is met in that case in another way by saying he knows enough about.
So the answer
we're talking about a Civil War pardon 100 years later. This is totally different. There's other variables involved.
And that's already established in legal theory by a different precedent than what we are talking about.
I'm the only one referencing law here.
So the answer is, if you're saying there could be another way to get to that specificity, which by the way I agree with, I think there's another way you get to that specificity. Then the answer would be
that's the legal standard.
Then the answer would be it's not necessary to know the names, because there are other ways to get to that level of specificity.
Perhaps not, but I would argue that in cases like January 6th,
what you said before.
Perhaps not in the Civil War case.
But
that's why I told you that would be my off-the-cuff answer.
Special pleading for Trump, special pleading for
side.
Confederates. I mean, that's
I can easily argue that for both sides. That's not the point.
Here's the issue: is they don't even know who all the Confederates were. There's not like there was record keeping for mom and pop that were fighting the Confederacy and whatever. So this is my point. Is I know it's a good point, and here's the thing: is that you are being real weaselly here and trying to apply both of these things to the same standard when one has been established by thousands of years of legal precedent across multiple nations, and the U.S. military and the U.S. government follows that precedent in regards to conquering nations and conquering armies. Thank you, Leah. I understand. Just like English law, old English law is the precedent established American law.
Even that's not thousands of years. The common law, starting with the Magna Carta, is less than 1,000 years.
Yes, but blanket amnesty as a concept, when if you conquer another people, is something that has been established for thousands of years since goddamn the ancient Greeks. It is absolutely relevant. So when you're going to sit here and go, this is the same as the January 6ers, you're on somebody like bullshit and you're being dishonest, because once again, the standard principle and I are promoting are, hey, we will go and grant you
need the names unless you're Confederates, unless you're Trump, then you don't need the names.
Unless there's evidence that they were involved in this, they were cognitively aware of this, able to give consent, and we have a paper trail showing this of somewhere, whether that's transcripts, whether that's recordings, whatever. But when you go, hey, let's hold Biden to that standard, you go, Lordy, I want to be afraid. I don't want Biden to know. We don't need nobody to ask about Biden.
What is
nobody need to know nothing.
Okay, it boils down.
Here's the order. Stop. Here's the order we're going to go in. Okay. I'm going to read these super chats. I'm going to give it to Nina because Nina needs a chance. Going to give her the mic and have her say, right? And that's what we're going to do. And then it's getting to time, gang. And so after Nina goes and we have the back and forth, we're going to go to closings. That's the order we're going to go in. So $10 from Vish A to say, POTUS tells Bob to autopen pardon on a memo. Memo is then shredded and pardon is autopenned. There is now no proof of approval other than the word of mouth. Is the pardon valid or invalid if challenged? Does the word of a mouth of a staffer count as evidence?
Who are you asking?
If they're willing to testify, perhaps. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. So
at least
we do have
to start looking into things.
Then we do have
If
evidence.
they're willing to testify under oath,
right?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, then we do have evidence, right? That Biden signed these things.
Did they testify under oath?
I'm not sure, but I'm sure.
Well, until they testify under oath, I'm not going to necessarily just give them credibility by default.
Then why would you come to the conclusion that they're
I don't think you would even
never apply the standard to the other side.
Why would you come to the conclusion? If you're
absolutely, I've been consistent applying the standard. I'm just saying because some anonymous staffer came forward, I have to believe them because I hate Trump, right? That makes sense.
If you're saying that, hey, there
here's what I'm saying. Autopen requires the intent and consent of the president. It does not reflect the intent and consent of the president. That's it. You guys have lost this debate.
bro. So just to be clear, you're shifting standards of.
You lost on every legal principle you are actually wrong on, and then the actual overall debate you lost. Because your argument is that the auto pen requires intent and consent of the president. Okay. Auto pen requires intent and consent of the president. It is not reflective of. It is not reflective of.
Not just auto pen, right? No, wait.
That's your argument.
Not just auto pen.
It's a failing argument.
Wait. Not just auto pen, right? Every pardon requires knowledge and intent. Agreed? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So when you say auto pen requires knowledge and intent, you're being way too narrow, right? Everything requires it. Fair?
No.
Why are you not being more narrow? And now that gets to Nina's point
at
the beginning.
True. That's why the point is that auto pen alone is not sufficient evidence.
That gets to Nina's point in the beginning, which it seemed to be the case that you said that we're not doing special rules for auto pens, but now it actually does seem like you're having special rules for auto pen where there's something more specific about the auto pen.
Thank you.
Well, okay, you can understand how a wet ink signature is slightly different than an auto pen because the auto pen has the potential for forgery, whereas a wet ink signature cannot be forged by its own signer. You understand that,
right? Are you saying the wet ink signature cannot be forged?
You understand that?
Wait.
Does that make sense to you?
Can a wedding signature be forged, yes or no?
When we say wedding signature,
can you forge your own signature?
Can you forge your own signature on a wedding document?
No,
not a wedding. Okay, no, it's not a wedding document.
Okay, this is a completely different thing. Okay, so I just okay.
No. So the question is, do you think can a wedding signature can a wet ink signature be forged? Yes or no?
What? A wet ink.
Wet ink.
Can a wet ink signature be forged by the signer themselves? Can you forge your own signature is what I'm asking. Can the president forge his own signature in wet ink? No, of course not. But can his signature be forged by auto pen? Is there a distinction worth recognizing there?
Wait, can a staffer forge a wet ink signature? That's the question. Is it possible?
Well, yeah, that's the auto pen. That is the
yes,
auto
that's
pen.
also possible.
The question is
both would be fraud. Both would be fraud.
Wait, so you said before a wet ink signature could not be forged. That's not true, is it?
Cannot be forged by the person signing it. Cannot be forged by the person signing it.
Wait a second.
Yes, an auto pen can be forged by. It is literally forged by definition. Is forged. It is literally not the criminal act forgery, but is literally forging the signature of the president to affix in a legal manner.
We're talking about a situation in which someone other than the president, I assume if the president's just signing something, that it would be their authentic signature.
Nobody wet inks this. Okay.
You know what I'm getting at, bro. Come on. So if someone other than the president has a wet ink, they can try to forge a signature. Fair?
Yes, that would also be fraud and illegal.
So then what distinguishes the auto pen and the
what if
the
they use the auto pen?
There is a distinction between when a pen is used by the signer. If Joe Biden signed it, there's no dispute that Joe Biden signed this. He's signed it in wet ink. That is his signature. That is different than auto pen.
We want evidence that there was intent for this to be done.
The auto pen is not inherently done by him.
It's not
There is a distinction. How are you pretending you can't understand the difference? You can't forge your own signature, and the auto pen can be forged.
Wait. So if
how is that confusing?
What do you mean forged?
You were just making the point that hang on. You were just making the point that you can't trick the president because you were agreeing that the wet ink signature is inherently valid. You just argued that.
No.
You just argued that, Pisco.
No. I didn't argue it, and you're deeply confused.
Yes, you did. You just argued that the president can be tricked. You just argued it because you can't forge your wet signature.
So
you just lost.
When the president,
GG's, Marie, it's over.
It's over. He said, "Let me put an accidental guy on there." That's exactly what. Yeah, that's exactly.
Wait a second. Just
calm the fuck down. Congratulations, buddy. You played yourself.
Okay. His own argument. The wedding signature. He literally admitted the wedding signature can be tricked because it's a wet ink signature. That means it can't be forged. That's literally you agreeing with me.
I love when lefties talk.
Welcome to law school.
I love when lefties talk because they are best speakers for conservatives or the lefties themselves.
Let's be clear about something. What we're talking about is a situation in which someone other than the president is purporting to sign documents. Okay, so
that's inherent with auto pen.
So it is. Wait.
Why would the president use his own auto pen?
That wasn't what we were arguing.
Why would the president use his own auto pen? Why? Can you tell me one reason?
Wait. Presidents use their own auto pen. Wait.
Can you not think of a reason?
He go over and press the button himself instead of signing it.
Wait a second.
All of you. Someone who is signing, you just said something so fucking stupid. 1,500 signatures. You can't understand why someone would want to use a mechanical.
Sure.
Wait. You
would understand.
Gibbs, you have to go way harder.
Wick. Hang on, Wick.
Shut the fuck up.
Please.
Shut the fuck up.
You're not suggesting that the president presses the button on the auto pen. You're certainly not doing that, right?
Wait a second.
Is that what you're saying?
Wait a second.
Joe Biden tinkering with the little box.
Wait a second. Are you denying that presidents have used the auto pen before?
No, and I have no problem with it. If you followed me at all, you'd understand I have no problem with the auto pen. Nina's mind blown because she hasn't followed it all this whole time.
So just be clear. Presidents have used the auto pen. Fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're talking
with
about
clear directives to the people to use it, clearly showing their intent and knowledge of its use.
Whoa, you are adorable.
You just got
yourself on your own argument.
God, you're literally making my argument and you have no idea.
Bro,
you're making my argument and you have no idea.
Nina, you have no idea what we're arguing at all. You haven't had any idea this whole panel what we're arguing.
So what we're talking about,
what
we're talking about is a situation. What we're talking about is a situation in which someone other than the president is either using an auto pen or signing something.
Correct.
And your point is that there's some substantive difference between how we should sort of prima facie treat an auto pen signature versus a wet ink signature. And my question
because
for you is, what is that basis? What is
that
the basis?
Is that you cannot forge your own signature. Joe Biden's wet ink signature is self-authenticating. It is his knowledge and consent is inherent because he did it.
You
we don't know that he did it when it's auto pen. You need something to show that consent.
Blue guy,
and it's not the part in itself that shows that consent.
Is it the case that the auto pen signature on Joe Biden's pardons, are those documents self-authenticating? Yes or no under the federal rules of evidence?
They can be
yes or no.
They would be self-authenticating if they were challenged and the court came in without this challenge.
You just said both a wet ink signature pardon.
The signature is not self-authenticating. If you're challenging the signature, it's not. If you're challenging the pardon, it is. It is. Yes, you can auto pardon the signature. You understand the difference between different issues. You're asking me two different issues, and when I give you two different answers, you're confused.
What is authentication? What is authentication?
The authentication would be that he gave knowledge and consent. That is how you prove it.
What is authentication?
In what context? What are you asking?
In the evidentiary context, the context you brought it up, right, dumbass?
Okay.
Do you know what authentication is? Yes or no?
Blatantly wrong. So I wouldn't be pulling that card.
Or that's not answering. Do you know what it is? Do you know what authentication
you're talking about? Authentication. A pardon would be self-authenticating.
No,
you're
I'm
right.
asking you what authentication is. Do you know?
What do you mean? It's when are you talking about the federal rules of evidence? It's what allows evidence to come in.
In the evidentiary context, what does authentication mean?
It means that the document is valid and is legitimate. Yes.
Is that what you think authentication is?
What's your explanation?
Authentication is that the document is what it purports to be. Okay, that
yes,
authenticated piece
that
of
would
evidence.
Be what I said, legitimate and valid. Was that not be pretty close?
Because that's broader than what.
No, really, it's not close. It's not. I'm sure for you guys right now don't want to admit that it's close.
It actually is broader. It actually is too. It's too broad. It's far too broad. So when you say something,
it's the right direction. All right, I think we're making the point.
So for example, when you're putting forth an evidence, an email, you would get someone on the stand and say, "Is this an email? Yes. Is this fairly reflect what it was actually sent? Yes." That is a person on the stand authenticating that email and saying this email is what it purports.
We would accept this.
It is what it purports.
The fact that you don't even have this authentication for the pardons is damaging. Because sure, what is it? What is it?
So it is what it purports to be.
Biden signed off on this.
So the pardon. So just to be clear, you agree that the pardon, either with the auto pen or without the auto pen, is self-authenticating under the federal rules of evidence.
If the pardon isn't being challenged, if the pardon is not being challenged,
that's not true.
If the issue is not the signature on the pardon, yes.
Okay. I mean,
no, this is like basic law. How are you confusing this?
We're going in circles.
How are you confusing this, Pisco?
I really feel you have no understanding of this.
This is what we're gonna do. $10.
It's basic law.
Hold on, stop. $10 from Alexander Wren to say, by the regards of Gibbs.
How do you not get it?
We're gonna give it to Nina. By the regards of Gibbs, a president may at any time claim he didn't know someone was on the pardon and have it revoked. How utterly ridiculous. And then $5. What if someone else wet signs as Joe? Thank you for the $5 from Vish A.
Wait, so I think that would actually be legitimate. So if someone with the authorization of Joe Biden, right? Let's say with Joe says, you can wet ink my signature, and he authorizes someone to wet ink his signature, I believe that would be valid. Do you guys?
Sure.
I mean, it sounds like
let's get an answer. Let's get an answer. Yes or no?
I don't know.
What do you mean?
It sounds like the
What do
auto
you mean
pen
you
to
don't
me.
know?
It sounds
What do
like
you mean you don't know?
Okay, what I mean is that I've been saying this entire time. The issue here is that the president's signature reflects his knowledge and consent. You cannot delegate this away. You cannot give it to somebody else. It reflects the president's knowledge and consent. If you don't have the president's knowledge and consent, you can't use the auto pen for it.
The OLC memo says that you can.
You literally can't.
Wait, the OLC memo, as reported and as I read it in the
says that the president can delegate his signature to someone else to use on whatever they want.
No, that's not what it says.
As an agent, it explicitly says the opposite of what you guys are arguing.
He can delegate. He can authorize someone.
I'll post this on my Twitter if anyone wants to read it after the debate, so they actually know what the real law is and what it says.
He can authorize. Bro, you are so triggered that you got caught out on the name thing. I mean, it's embarrassing.
Dude, I've been getting you on every single legal concept you've tried to bring up tonight. I've called you out and you know it.
I would not post this on your YouTube or Twitter.
GG Noriz, bro.
I would not post this on your YouTube or Twitter. I think it's pretty embarrassing for you. But if someone...
Dude, this is going all over my shit. You laid factually wrong legal claims. I'll clip those for sure.
Name one.
Dude, when you said that when you were talking about the president being able to mistakenly sign something, you conceded there one of your arguments, right?
No. You agreed. Wait. I said there is a notion of an accidental pardon in the sense that you could mistake.
Yeah, and you also you were wrong when you said that there's no specificity needed. You said the president can delegate the pen.
Come on. If you
were wrong about that legally, I'll clip it. It'll go on my X. It'll go on my X if you want to see me calling out Pisco. So just actually factually wrong legal claims.
You're gonna accuse me.
Pisco, stop. I'll stop you both. I've been trying to get the mic to Nina because Nina's sitting here trying to get in, and you guys are both going at it, right? Which is fine. It's fun. But Nina needs a chance to have the mic, so we're going to get the mic to Nina. I understand you guys disagree on this. You guys are both disagreeing on this. Nina, you have the mic. Go for it.
Again, we're a little bit in the legal minutia that, I am not a lawyer myself. I know Pisco is, so I do like to give him the mic with that, generally speaking. But I also know Blue Guy is somebody who does not. He didn't say he was a lawyer, or I'm not aware of his background. He is a lawyer? Oh, okay. Well, then I'm kind of out of my depth when it comes to that, but it does seem like he's kind of a piece of shit when it comes to at all, like, hearing anything from other people, so I don't really understand why he wants to do debates. But, we love that for them. I didn't really have anything to jump in right there. So I know you're trying to give me the...
Speaker stick.
My notes are from, like...
It's
your
like an hour ago. Say whatever you like.
I know. I'm fumbling. It's been a while since I've done debates. Okay, so I'm sorry I don't have more to say here.
I think.
Are we doing closing? Are we doing closing?
Well, we don't. Okay,
yeah,
I thought it. We are now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
So what we're gonna do is 8:00 and gang.
If we're doing closing, I can do closing. I thought you wanted me to.
I promise. I'll give you the mic.
Gotcha.
Back.
Okay.
Just let me close it out, gang. I don't know if
for sure
it's been productive or fun.
I thought it was. I think
I learned a lot. Here we are. Stop. Let me do my show. So, gang, if you enjoyed this shit, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I don't know why you would, but whatever. Gibbs, closing statements. Tell people.
Thank you so much. Well, I just for funsies, I want to bring out the Black's Law Dictionary again in my closing here. Authentication. I can't even talk. Don't worry. The slurred word I tried to just butcher out there. Authentication. Broadly, the act of proving that something as a document is true or genuine, especially so if it may be admitted as evidence. The condition of being so proved. What I'm asking for, and I'm willing to concede the standard for Trump, for every president going forward, is proof of their cognitive ability. Proof that they ordered something, whether that's a transcript, whether it's an audio file, whether it's whatever, and it was in line with their intent, and it wasn't some shadow guy doing this in their name while they're taking advantage of a puppet government in place. If you like what I had to say, what Penn had to say, we're going to be on a panel next on Prime. So go check out Prime. We're going to be debating DEI, I believe. And this week, we got 2 panels on Thursday. It's going to be fun back-to-back, 5 o'clock and 7:30, and then on Wednesday, an all-female panel, because Gibbs is a feminist, and we're having our weekly Wicked Wednesday outnumbered segment, because I want to give, as a true conservative and a true feminist, a place for women to talk. Thank you so much for having me. I love coming on. It's the best. And thank you for everybody else.
Check him out. I have every one of these people's socials listed in my YouTube description. You can click on that and you can find them. Nina, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just think it's It's kind of silly that we big criticism from my detractor or interlocutors here were that oh, we weren't talking about the auto pen, and then we are talking about the auto pen, and then we're not talking about the auto pen, and then we are talking about the auto pen. It seems like really telling lack of consistency within their ideology, and that maybe that's a good thing with the lawyer to just always like want to win. But like I think in within the context of this argument, they were being very weaselly as with this shit, and it didn't seem consistent at all. Being that that was the main thing that they were concerned about. I think that I will admit I am out of my depth when it comes to a lot of legal stuff because I'm not a lawyer. I am not a lawyer, and if my tractor blue guy here is a lawyer himself, then sure. But he would have more experience than I do. However, I just don't think that um, he really had any good arguments here. I think Pisco did a very good job because he is the lawyer here, dismantling those arguments that he tried to make and kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth on this because he knew he had a bad argument. So he just tried to be as Weasley as possible to try and win, which he didn't.
Well, good. No better time for me to explain exactly how you missed the point. You guys are using the auto pen as proof of Biden's knowledge and intent when we're suggesting
we are
that
talking about the auto pen.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking about the auto pen because that's your guys' evidence towards Biden's proof of intent. That's what you guys are claiming is proof of the pardons. We're suggesting that you actually need the president's knowledge and consent. That is not inherent with the auto pen because he didn't sign it. It could have been forged and that door is open. And it's simply as that. The auto pen requires the intent and consent of the president. It is not reflective of that intent and consent. It's as simple as that. The fact that you guys have no proof that Biden had ever indicated or consented to these pardons will come up when Adam Schiff is charged in the fall. And I can't wait to see how it goes down.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Links to his stuff is in my YouTube description. Last but certainly not least, Pisco.
Was an embarrassing performance by our interlocutors. To start with the burden shifting, obviously the burden is on the people asserting the claim of an invalid pardon to bring that to bear. In the case of
pardon, just ignore that.
In the case of applying the standards that they are setting forth, for example, something ridiculous as specific knowledge of each individual, right? They would never apply the burden that, well, someone needs to show that Trump specifically heard the name with respect to the January 6th pardon, maybe in part because they realized that Trump did not ever hear that. And there's actually reporting of him saying, "Fuck it, pardon them all," and doing it carte blanche and saying it in a general way. Obviously, there's also proof of Andrew Johnson pardoning thousands and thousands of Confederates. There's no way that he stopped by and heard every specific one, every individual. But of course, they would never shift the burden that way when it was Confederates. They're special pleading for Trump, and they're special pleading for Confederates. And frankly, they're special pleading for Joe Biden because they just don't like him. The burden of proof is on them to adduce some evidence to show that he is so mentally incapable that he can't, sign agreements or acknowledge something or affirm something. The standard for showing that of individuals is quite high. And I didn't hear, I think Gibbs started to say that there's enough evidence to show that Biden is mentally incompetent. But the blue guy certainly didn't go that far. And when I pushed Gibbs on that a little bit, he said, well, we need to have an investigation. Well, if it's a foregone conclusion that Biden is mentally unfit or that these pardons are invalid, what will be the purpose of the investigation? A memorandum doesn't definitively show that Biden did this. I mean, what if the memorandum were forged? A wet ink signature, how do you know that wasn't forged? How do you know that? So everything with respect to the evidence that they say would be conclusive, even in one instance, the blue guy said, well, if he tweeted about it, and then immediately backtracked because he realized how stupid that sounded, because obviously I actually don't think that Joe Biden is in charge of his Twitter account, and that he probably says tweet something about this if he even does that. And in some cases he probably just delegates to a staffer to control the Biden Twitter account. No, the prima facie evidence that the pardon is valid is the fact that it was published and authorized by the office, and the burden's going to be on you to show that didn't happen or that for some reason it's defunct, and you haven't produced evidence. The evidence that Gibbs produced was one comment by Mike Johnson about a specific executive order, but just because one executive, even assuming Mike Johnson is correct that Biden said this about one executive order, doesn't mean that everything that Biden did he wasn't aware of, and you can't apply that generally. Or other kind of statements generally about Biden's declining mental, cognitive activity, but that by itself doesn't show that his mental capabilities are so far gone that he can't even authorize an agreement, right? Like even people who are on the verge of dementia, they can sign over certain agreements and in the right context. So yeah, I mean, there's just no evidence whatsoever that they can produce, and the burden is on them to show that these are invalid, inauthentic signatures, and just in general, a bunch of nonsense and stupidity, like saying Black's Law Dictionary is binding law on everybody, and then citing the OLC memo as though the memo is saying that you need to have this kind of, specific knowledge or specific specificity with the granularity of knowing the specific names. I agree that pardons need to be sufficiently specific so that courts can interpret them. Right now, there's litigation happening with respect to certain pardons about whether they cover this or that, and the courts will work that out. But it is not required that we have this kind of granularity that they're implying. And if it were that case, I think, as Nina suggested, we would be second guessing every single thing the Trump administration is doing, every executive action, all those pardons, and that kind of standard isn't workable. And it's not one that we've ever implied. Trump just said this out of his ass because of what the blue guy said at the end there. He wants to go after his political opponents. He's an authoritarian, and he wants to, claim that he has these supreme authorities and be able to attack people that he dislikes or that are his political opponents, as has been his want throughout the entirety of his political life.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Pisco. Again, links to all these people's descriptions. Yeah, we're going to leave now. We're going to rate it in Prime Guy.
Much love.
Bye, everyone.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you for coming, all of you. I love you.
I mean, it's a dumb topic. It's kind of like popcorn. Yeah, that guy was cooked. Blue guy was cooked. They're just unworkable standards. Like, just say random shit. You have to know the specific names. The burden shifting is wild, too. Like, you have to prove that the pardon is valid when they're the ones making the claim that they're invalid. Blue guy was giving heavy misogyny. Yeah, I do think it's a little bit misogynistic. I think it is a little misogynistic when it's clear what, like, Nina's saying. Like, is she slurring a little bit? But I slur a little bit. It's possible that, she's wearing Invisalign or whatever and is nervous. I get nervous too. And so, it's perfectly obvious what the point is that she's doing, she's raising, and why it's relevant. So I thought that, like, every time he's like, that's not relevant, that's stupid. I mean, no, what you guys are doing is not relevant when you're, like, talking about the preemptiveness of the pardon or talking about how I'm inconsistent because I criticize Doge, but I also think that the president can have advisors. I mean, really think about that opinion for a second. Stop and think about that accusation of hypocrisy. They're saying because I think that the president can do things pursuant to advice from his advisors, I can't criticize Doge. Like, how does that follow at all? Yeah, I thought that Nina did outlogic him, and he would shut her down in ways I think were illegitimate. Thanks so much for the membership, guys. I can't stand that, by the way. I'm not going to pretend to be... I'm not going to virtue signal about stopping or like ignoring women or that kind of thing. But when I see it happen, it pisses me off. People, like, don't listen to women on panels. It's not the first time that I've seen it happen. They'll just ignore them, say, you're drunk, you don't know what you're talking about. And I don't like it at all. That triggered response when I talked about Project 2025. They're like, oh, and immediate to the talking point, which is like, you would expect, wouldn't you, that any conservative president is going to overlap with Project 2025. So he's immediately to the talking point on the merits of whether Project 2025 has outsized influence on the administration, when all I'm talking about are the connections to other people other than Trump in writing these EOs, which I can't actually believe that he thinks that Trump had a significant role in the drafting or crafting of these executive actions. I mean, he's just listening to his advisors. Sometimes he has, like, you can tell when he cares about certain actions. But even then, like, his advisors will draft up what he wants. How do you counter the strategy of confidently declaring victory after saying something stupid? That was the blue guy's main strat. Well, I think it was self-defeating. I think, when was he? Oh, that was great, yeah. He was like, you got a lot of the legal statements wrong. I'm like, name one. When you said there could be an accidental pardon. I'm like, but you agreed that there could be. You literally agreed there could be. Like, we ran through that example. So the first thing you brought up is like something, okay, I said that there could be an accidental pardon. I stand by that. I don't think that's inaccurate. And you agreed, at least one example, that there could be. And so it was just like very desperate. The Confederacy point, you can tell whenever they don't want me to finish, they know that, like, the Twitter point, when he's like, if he had tweeted something about it, as soon as he said that, he knew that he was like, oh, well, assuming that you said he's in control. Great debate. Whenever you brought a Project 2012, you were totally correct in calling that out as triggered behavior. Yeah. It's just they hear the word and they're like, oh my God. And the goal is also, like, not to interrogate. This is a true Gish Gallop, right? When Admiral Gibbs says, well, Mike Johnson, take it for what you want. He said firsthand account that he didn't, and moving on, right? They don't want us to stop and be like, what did Mike Johnson actually say? Oh, he said with respect to an executive order. Well, if Biden is conversing with Mike Johnson, I didn't really know about this executive order. One, that doesn't appear to me to be evidence that he doesn't know about the pardon, right? It's possible a president knows. And like, how many times has President Trump said, I don't know about that. I don't know anything about that. President Trump literally said the other day, I don't know about the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. He said that, even though, and then realized, oh, wait, my invocation of the Alien Enemies Act is actually required to give effect to the Alien Enemies Act. And so they changed their tune. But like all the time, Trump is being like, I don't know about that. I don't really say about that. As though they would ever apply that level of ignorance to everything that Trump does. Well, just because he said one time he didn't know about something his office did, that means that Biden, every time he takes some executive action, doesn't know about what's going on. I mean, think about if that were the standard. That doesn't make any sense. And so the evidence they have to bring to bear is like not anything specific to the pardons themselves. It's coming from a biased source, which is Mike Johnson, which he acknowledges, right? Imagine if someone's like, yeah, Nancy Pelosi said that Trump said X. Would you guys credit them? Totally flubs what authentication is. He says it's whether something is valid or correct or something. It was some broad language as opposed to its evidentiary meaning, which oddly enough, I didn't actually have a problem with the citations of Black's Law Dictionary as general principles of law in these specific instances. It's just funny. They overstate things. They're like, Black's Law Dictionary, that's the go-to source. And Gibbs, I think a lot of the times he actually doesn't plan out what he says. And so he'll be like, for thousands of years has been the case, since the ancient Greeks. And no one knows what you're talking about, dude. And then there's a really key point there about the investigation where it's like, well, what actually is your position? And you saw at the beginning there, I'm trying to narrow the conversation so that we actually know what their position is prior to come into it. So we're not just talking around each other. Is it your position now that they're invalid or not valid? Now you could take the position where I think that it's likely they're invalid, or I take the position that we've seen enough that it's almost certainly is invalid. You could put some degree of confidence on it, but like, don't dodge the question. Or you can say, I don't know, we need an investigation. But when you say like Biden is not mentally capable based on what I've seen to sign onto the agreements, like you realize or to pardons, you realize how low of a threshold that is, right? Biden is able to extemporaneously talk. There are moments where he's like obviously bad, but there's never an instance where I'm like, okay, Biden overall has gotten to the point where he cannot sign on to like contracts. He can't take out a lease. He can't, he needs some kind of power of attorney or some kind of executor to take care of his estate. That's what the level we're talking about when it comes to like mental incompetency to do certain actions. Yeah, you can elect idiots and people who are declining in age and ability. We just elected the oldest person ever to be elected president. And as Nina brought up, there are a lot of instances of him doing stupid things, showing unawareness, saying things that are incoherent, not following, not having knowledge of what's happening around him. Yeah, a lot of special pleading stuff. The Civil War stuff was embarrassing. And then he kept saying, well, the auto pen signature is self-authenticating, or sorry, the wet ink signature is self-authenticating. I actually don't know the source of law for that. Under the federal rules of evidence, are wet ink signatures necessarily self-executing? I would think that you would need like somebody like, is that your signature? How do you know that's your signature? Well, I've seen it before. You need to like, there have been cases I know where people have gone on the stand to authenticate a signature. Is this the signature? I'm like, yes, I know. How do you know it's a signature? Well, it's because I've seen it before. Yeah, it's such a joke narrative. And like, you could see how they crumbled so easily in basic lines of questioning, a burden of proof, of what evidence. I mean, like, they really don't have evidence. They're like, okay, well, here's a report that says that they were like thinking about it and Biden was involved in the conversations, even to the level of granularity of knowing what's ahead. And Gibbs is like, oh yeah, I don't challenge the Hunter Biden pardon. Well, if Joe Biden is really mentally incapable of like having the level of consciousness to pardon anyone because he's just mentally infirm, why would you accept the validity of the Hunter Biden pardon? And he goes, well, I accept it because it's what I would do. If he's really mentally incapable of pardoning anybody, then it would stand to reason that he's incapable of pardoning Hunter Biden. these are the kind of inconsistencies that, like, right? If your whole argument is Biden as a person cannot give consent over pardons, if that's your argument, then none of those pardons, while he exists in that time frame of mental incompetency, are valid. Or you have to show that there are bouts of mental competency mixed with bouts of mental incompetency, and then you have to show that he was in one of those bouts of mental incompetency, because of course the burden of proof is on you. You bringing up the claim that it's invalid. Remember, Trump didn't say that the pardons, may or may not be invalid. He said they're not invalid, and so they're here defending that position. Yeah, I also love how it's such a crazy concept that Biden lied or changed his mind. Yeah, like my position is that Biden lied about the Hunter Biden pardon. I don't actually know if he made any statements about the Fauci pardon or whatever. But yeah, Trump lies too. Even on the Jan 6 stuff, members of his administration, I don't know if Trump himself said that he wouldn't pardon violent people, or at least strongly implied that, and then they did. So is having inconsistent positions is evidence that you didn't have consciousness over the pardon itself? We're not arguing whether Biden's a good guy or did a good thing. We're arguing about whether or not the pardon is valid.